Call to order the regular meeting of the Town of Superior Board of Trustees, the Superior Metropolitan District Number 1 Board of Directors, and the Superior McCaslin Interchange District Board of Directors for March 9th, 2015. Can we have the roll call, please?
Mayor Clint Paulson.
Here.
Mayor Pro Tem Deborah Williams.
Here.
Trustees Joe Sorelli.
Here.
Trustee Rita Dozell.
Here.
Trustee Lelia Gregoris.
Here.
Trustee Chris Hansen.
Here.
Trustee Cindy Pennington.
Here.
Town Manager Matt Hagley.
Here.
Town Attorney Kevin Cuttery.
Here.
Town Clerk Paul Sarton here.
Thank you. Next is the approval of our agenda. We have a motion to approve. Motion by Trustee Gregoris, second by Mayor Pro Tem Williams. All those in favor? Passes unanimous. Okay, next is reports, questions, and issues. This is reports from board members. Trustee Gregoris.
Yeah, first I wanted to congratulate Matt on his 15th year anniversary of being part of the town. It's incredible. You've been here 15 years.
I know. Doesn't seem that long. Thank you, though.
I told him that doesn't mean anything until he can match Phyllis, which is like 42 years on that.
I don't want to be working that long.
So, anyway, a couple things. Kudos to the town for the snow removal. We got dumped in February, record-breaking month. So I think they did a great job. So will you pass that along?
I will. Thank you.
And I noticed, as we had lunch today in our monthly meeting, but since then I noticed some of the potholes have been fixed.
Yeah.
Especially up by Rock Creek and McCaslin. They're killing our cars for the last 2 weeks. They were like brutal potholes.
We'll have
I felt like I was in New York.
We'll have crews out all week.
Yeah, but thank you for, I know it's warming up now, so thanks for getting on top of that and starting to. The last thing is met with the youth, the Superior Youth Leadership Council last Wednesday. And, they're kind of going through their growing pains, I would say. I kind of, Patrick and I talked about it a lot, and with Katie too. Some of their elected leaders were missing in action this last time, so the remaining faithful ones that showed up, maybe a little bit intimidated, maybe a little bit. So you could sense the energy was kind of down. So we had more of the adults leading the discussions, and I'd like to see more of the kids leading the discussions and taking more ownership of that. So I think we have some ideas to perk them up a little bit. And there's some issues that I think at some point, maybe in our board retreat, we don't have to do it here tonight, but there's some kids that have dropped off basically, not a lot. And there are other kids that would like to participate and be part of that. So I don't know if we have a mechanism.
We should treat it just like we do the other advisory committees, and if they have so many, I hate to say unexcused absences because they're in school and they've got homework and all that kind of stuff, but we should maybe have the president of the organization approach them and say, if you can't be here, let's give someone else an opportunity to be on.
And there are a couple of kids that have basically, they're not coming back, so it's not even homework or anything.
Yeah.
So I feel like if we have people kids that want to participate and others that don't want to participate, we've got to find some way to make that happen.
Yeah.
Have they formally said they were not coming back? Oh, okay.
A couple of them, yeah.
Did they give a particular reason? No?
I don't know the specifics of that, but yeah. And then there's also a thought of everybody else in all the other committees, really, it's almost like a 2-year calling, if you will. With them, it's only 1 year, and we thought that maybe if we make it the same, obviously not the seniors, but anybody else who's younger, so there's some continuity, and I think they will be more invested to know that we're here for 2 years. It just, I'd like your feedback at some point, just food for thought.
Okay.
And the last thing is that the plan is really from January to December, but the next election basically are in August, so I'd like to align those two, because it's going to misalign the way that it is. So maybe we can have if the beginning of their term, let's say, is August 1st, let's have that be the plan as well for the next.
No, that makes sense.
So just, some things to discuss anyway. They're great kids. I love being there, but I can notice they were a little bit down this week.
And I would like to mention a couple things. That the majority of that committee is very young. their 9th grade, 8th grade, and 10th grade. And there's very few 11th graders, and there's 0 12th graders.
There's a 12th grader.
Is there one? Okay.
Yeah.
So I think that makes it challenging for this committee as well. And it is, I mean, they're just getting going.
Right.
And it's going to take a little while, and I'm sure there will be growing pains. And so I think we should just give them a little bit more time before we...
Absolutely, but I think we need to also coach them as adults and as leaders, to coach them how to run a meeting and so on. Actually, your daughter was assigned to take the lead a little bit, and I borrowed your gavel and I gave it to her so she can feel more like she was in charge, so that was...
Yeah, and I think it would have helped her if she was notified ahead of time that she would be running the meeting.
Right, but the top 3 leaders were all missing, and nobody knew that until we showed up. So, you're right.
So,
it just kind of fell on her.
Yeah.
It's probably unfair, but...
So, and I agree, and I think she made a comment too, that the liaison, not the town staff liaison, needs to help run the meeting a little more than they are, since they are new at this, and you did mention that would be very helpful. So I think you might want to look at that.
Yeah, we'll have good discussion, yeah.
Okay.
All right.
It's a delicate balance because
It
we
is.
don't want to overtake the meeting.
Right.
Absolutely.
Yeah, so,
Right.
yeah.
Completely agree.
Right. Anyway, great kids, love working with them, and we'll get through it, so.
Think good? Okay. Trustee Pennington?
Okay, with the impact sports decision that was made last meeting not to pursue that agreement, in my comments on that, I raised the specter of potentially a November 2016 ballot issue. And just to follow that through, there is no decision on whether or not there will be anything put on the November 2016 ballot, but I just wanted to say to the camera and the people who may be watching this that the next retreat, which looks like it will be the end of April, will deal with some of these discussions. So that is not something that's just being dropped. It's actually going to be pursued. Chris and I attended another survey working group. We keep trudging through all the different data analysis. We have to request it, and then it takes a couple of weeks to produce, and then it comes back, and it may or may not be what we were looking for, et cetera. So it's a sort of a long process. But in that, we discussed the concept of a field trip to actually go to some regional recreation/community center facilities. Chris and I floated a date for the first group of people to go March 17th, assuming that April meeting would be much earlier in the month than it appears to be. But anyway, you'll be getting a notice from town staff on whether or not you want to participate in that, and I would anticipate we would go and see 3 or 4 facilities in a day so we can
We've done that
see
before.
what different
Yeah.
ones look like. So that's just up and coming. If you get the Boulder Daily camera, I have never seen so much Boulder City coverage. They're undergoing a comp plan. They had an excellent article this morning about 3 renditions of how to redo Boulder Creek Corridor. And to me, if we can spare any staff time to go and watch some of those processes, and I think all we can do is learn from them. I would love to attend some of those Boulder Creek concept meetings as we contemplate how to do Coal Creek. But anyway, if you don't get the newspaper, you might want to go online and check them out because there's a lot of coverage. We had an excellent article in the Camera today on Calmonte. I think Lisa Ritchie deserves great kudos. She really, really was right on target with her comments. Unfortunately, I thought some of the facts in the piece were a little off in terms of the timing of the development out there, et cetera, because some was in place and now some is new, et cetera. But nonetheless, the piece on whole was a great article on Calmonte and superiors on the move and that kind of thing. And then I would ask Matt, at some point, could you give us an update on, I saw the Public Arts Working Group has been constituted, but could you tell us, sort of what their plan is and what they will be doing?
Okay, is that all?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. So Mayor Pro Tem Williams?
Yes. Hold on. I had a First Fridays last Friday, and the topic was civic spaces in the town center. And it was a nice, small discussion. Not as many people as I normally have, which is sometimes nice and sometimes not. Depends on how in-depth you want to get on the conversation. And in the future, I think I'm going to continue noticing the meetings I had this time and the last time, so that other trustees that want to come certainly can, Mayor as well. And maybe we'll get more of a crowd this time. You never know. Also, I have a library meeting this week, so I'll report on that next time. And we do not have a meeting the fourth Monday, March 23rd. So enjoy your spring break. And also wanted to find out, I just sort of saw an email, and I didn't really follow up. I just saw it around 5 o'clock before I walked out the door. Louisville is doing some sort of public outreach on McCaslin, and I was wondering if you know anything about that. Give us any information, any feedback, what they're looking to do.
I can get the board some additional information. They're doing these small area plans, I think that's what they call them, for McCaslin,
Right.
the McCaslin corridor, and they've divided the whole corridor up into parcels or planning areas, and they're trying to get feedback from their residents on what they'd like to see there.
Okay.
But I'll provide more information to you as well.
And do you know what parts of McCaslin they're looking at first?
I think it's all the way from via Appia down to South Boulder Road. Yeah.
Okay. Right. Great.
Okay. Trustee Hanson?
Well, we got the youth involved again with our town. We had the Superior Elementary School Student Council here doing their student council meeting on the 27th of this month, and it was really fun to see them do their thing. And they had their primary or council members up here at the dais leading the meeting, and they were extremely organized. Got a lot done. It was really exciting to watch. So we've got DVDs coming for them because it was televised. It won't be on Channel 8, but we'll send out DVDs to them. And I know the teachers that run that were really satisfied with that and really thankful. So thank you very much, Matt, for getting that done. At the last ProStack meeting, we had some representatives from Monarch Little League who are here tonight. And we don't have this as an agenda item, but I did want to ask the board if we could take a little bit of time and talk about Founders Park and the Kupfer Field. When that was first being discussed, of putting a skin field there, we had met with Monarch Little League and discussed the possibilities of at least allowing them to program Kupfer Field for T-ball, nothing more than T-ball. So I know that during public comment they're going to be asking about the possibilities of doing that perhaps 4, 5, or 6 hours a week, maybe 3 or 4 hours on a Saturday, to reserve that so that they could play T-ball. So can we make some time for that, either now or during public comment, or?
Let's have a public comment, and then we can discuss that.
Okay.
Right after that point.
Perfect. All right. And that's it. Thank you.
Okay. Trustee Sorelli?
I have nothing.
Okay. Trustee Dozell?
I attended Mayor Pro Tem's Deborah Williams' first Friday, and I love the idea that she's posting it so that more of us could attend. Instead of having so many different gatherings of in the community, I think it's good if we can kind of do it as 1 or 2 meetings rather than, or sessions. I don't call it a meeting necessarily, it's really a way to interact and
Informal
engage.
community.
Yeah, engage with the residents as they come through, and it's good at Starbucks because some people stop by as they're getting their coffee and stop for a few minutes and talk, so appreciate that. Thank you for holding that. I will be attending the Dr. Cog meeting this coming Wednesday on March 18th, so I'll report out on the outcome of that in April when we get back. Thank you.
Okay, I'll do my updates. First, welcome to Monarch Little League members and parents. Appreciate you coming for our 4-hour meeting, and glad you agreed to stay through the whole thing. That's really brave of you. Just kidding. On the 25th of February, I went on a snowplow ride with Superior Maintenance, and I'd recommend that to anyone who's has an interest in that. It's a real eye-opener, especially during a whiteout blizzard. And I've got some video clips on my mayor Facebook page if you want to take a look at that. On the 27th, I went to Longmont to the Longmont Chamber of Commerce's Unity in the Community event. It's a big open house for their chamber members and a lot of other communities, mostly Northeast. I think I was definitely the outlier for South Boulder County communities, but it was a good event. On March 5th, U.S. 36 Mayors and Commissioners Coalition meeting in Broomfield. We talked about our Washington, D.C. trip, which we're taking next week. This is an annual trip that mayors along the U.S. 36 corridor take, along with some staff members. And so myself and Alex Arnello, our Public Works Director, will be going to Washington, D.C. next Wednesday for 3 days. We've got a full day of meetings with both U.S. Senators Bennett and Gardner, Representatives Buck, Polis, Perlmutter, and Tipton, and several other meetings. So it should be a very exciting trip. We also, at that meeting, talked about the RTD fare study, that express bus fare looks like it's going to go from $5 to $5.50. An all-stop bus is going to be priced at $2.60. So the all-stop is if you want to go from Superior to Denver and stop at Broomfield, Westminster, and all of the stops in between. So there'll actually be a cheaper option if this proposal is passed. There'll actually be a cheaper option than currently exists for getting to Denver. You just have to take more stops. There's also some discussion about the bus rapid transit operations plan, and they're proposing to do mostly express buses in the rush hour, so morning and evening, but do away with the express buses during the day. So during the day, it would be all stops. So there's a little bit of pushback from some of the members saying, hey, you're actually decreasing service there. So there's definitely some debate there. On the 7th, on last Saturday, I went to a Girl Scout event and presented a proclamation that I signed at our last meeting. So this is Girl Scout Week, for those who weren't aware of that. Congratulations to Matt for 15 years with the town. And check out our new town website if you've not done so already. The town staff has done an amazing job completely rebuilding our website, and it functions much better and has a lot more features, and we're continuing to add to that. So definitely check out the town's new website. And I've got upcoming events, but I'll do that after manager, attorney, and clerk updates. Anything?
I don't have anything.
Okay. Town clerk? Town attorney?
Nothing for me either, thanks.
Okay. So I'll read off the upcoming events. Some of these have been mentioned already, but I'll go through them quickly just so everybody's aware of them. On Saturday, March 14th, there's a winter wildlife walk. Starts at the South Pool. Reminder, March 23rd, no board meeting. March 31st, we've got a grand opening in the Superior Marketplace, Dixon Orthodontics. Thursday, April 9th, Stand Up for Transportation Day. It's a rally and press conference at Denver Union Station. I'll be attending that, and we also did a corresponding proclamation that's in tonight's packet. Saturday, April 18th is Hazardous Waste Drop-Off at El Dorado K-8, Arbor Day celebration at Founders Park, and also, this was brought up at our RCAC dinner that we had just before the meeting, there will be no large item pickup this year for if you've got couches and things you're storing in your garage, hoping that will be hauled away. That's not happening this year, and that was decided in last year's budget. So just please go ahead and dispose of the couches another way. April 19th, fly fishing lesson at Purple Park. April 23rd, Historical Commission Chairperson Larry Dorsey is going to present a great slideshow on history of Colorado railroads with an emphasis on Boulder County rail lines. Friday, April 24th is the Mayor and Manager Town Update, also known as the State of Superior, with the Superior Chamber of Commerce. That's a $10 box lunch, and we're going to do that at the Fire Station Community Room. And then finally, on April 26th is another fly fishing lesson at Purple Park.
Are businesses invited to the mayor-manager town update?
Anyone is invited to the Mayor-Manager Town Update. Chamber.
Have businesses been notified?
Yes, Chambers doing notification on that, yes. And now, the moment that Monarch has been waiting for is public comment. So for public comment, please come forward, state your name and address for the record.
Hi, I'm Jody Bennett. My address is 2635 Clayton Circle here in town of Superior. And I am currently the president of Monarch Little League. I'll try to make this brief and just, it sounds like you're familiar with kind of why we're here. So just a little bit of history and background. Here on behalf of Monarch Little League, these fine folks and 350 of their friends, we run a youth baseball organization for Superior and Louisville, servicing kids ages 4 through 14. We have 6 divisions. They run from T-ball, machine pitch, kid pitch, and juniors. We have kids that are upper levels travel to the North Metro area for games, and then we also bring in those people come to us for home games. So we do a lot of servicing both local and in the North Metro area. We hold practices every night of the week and on the weekends. We hold games pretty much every night of the week and on the weekends. And at this time, 90% of our field space is in Louisville. So knowing that we conduct business pretty much every day of the week from mid-March through early June, we're going 90% of the time to Louisville. 2 years ago, we saw the development and participated in Founders Park, the opening day ceremonies and all of that kind of stuff. We had our kids out there. We were a part of those conversations. And we were thrilled with Kuppner Field. And we were so excited with their desire and with their request to put a baseball park in place. We saw their love for it and felt the same thing. Our league is growing and was growing at the time at our younger divisions, and we were running out of space. So we were kind of excited about the fact that baseball fields were in the talks and in the works. After the park was built and we found out about the neighborhood park designation and found out that that park was not programmable, we were under the assumption, and we were told, which gave us that assumption, that baseball fields were going to be part of the talks for the town center field space. So we kind of were under the assumption that baseball fields, that there was going to be something, it was coming, it just was going to take a little bit more time. We've been here for many years. We're one of the only youth sports organizations run out of Superior and Louisville. Most of the other sports organizations that are actually run out of the town of Superior are no longer. And so when the town center discussions started happening, we were a part of those and had been a part of those and tried to represent ourselves in a way that baseball would be a consideration for the town center. As things have fallen into place, the additional baseball field that we were the additional baseball space that we were under the assumption that we would get is now dissipated. We don't see that there's a plan for that at Town Center, and we don't see that there's really any other space to put a baseball field that's been in discussions that we've done. So we approached ProStack because we've been eyeing this field, knowing that it's perfect for T-ball. And I'd like to actually represent. If you three would stand up for me, please. This is not T-ball. This is not hitting it over the fence. Actually, we were driving by, and this one said to me, "Oh, this would be an awesome place to play my games." I said, "No, you'd hit it across the street." So this is not T-ball. Thank you. Simon, stand up. Rudy, stand up. Tyler. This is who we're talking about, and even younger than these guys, okay? So we're talking, I know you don't play T-ball. We're talking young, little kids who are out there with their families, they're out there with their siblings, they're out there with their grandparents, their families throw a blanket down, bring their chairs, help participate, 4 to 6-year-olds who barely hit it past first base. The way that I look at it, and Monarch Little League looks at it, the neighborhood park is still a neighborhood park. because you have families that are looking across the street and they see the little kids out there and they want to go out and see. What are they doing out there? That looks like fun. I want to go participate. I want to be a part of it. T-ball games will not take up the entire space. They will take up the baseball field that we're talking about. There's still all the grass area. There's still the park. There's still plenty of room for neighborhood families to come out, kick a ball, throw a frisbee, and enjoy the park on a sunny day. The other piece that you guys can sit down now. The other piece that we are asking for is for this to be a trial. Our T-ball season is an 8-week session. It starts the second week of April and goes through the first week of June with no scheduling on Memorial Day. We went to ProStack and we asked them to please consider programming this field for T-ball only, exclusively T-ball. We have, to be honest with you, the field isn't big enough for anything else. So we're not going to come back next year and say, okay, you gave us T-ball, now we want machine pitch. We're not going to ask for lights, we're not going to ask for power, although I think they're there already, but that's not what we're looking at this for. T-ball for 8 weeks. ProStack had agreed to up to 6 hours per week to program it for us, and let's just give it a try. We'd like to ask that you give it a try. Let's see how it goes. And then we'll reevaluate after the season to see if it was something that benefited the community or not.
Okay, great, thanks.
And I have a parent here that is going to speak also just from a parent perspective.
Great,
Thank you for your consideration.
thank you.
Thank you, Jordan.
Thanks for taking the time. My name is Mike Myers, 2535 Clayton Circle. I've been a volunteer with Monarch Little League for 8 years now as a coach and currently serve on the board. As Jody says, 2 of the 8 fields that we currently play on are in Superior. The other 6 we go over to Louisville. 90% of the time we are in Louisville. I've played at all those fields. In the current field that the kids for T-ball play on is at Enriedo Park. It's on the west side of that park, and let's just be honest, in all fair, it's not a great place for kids to go play baseball. There's older kids play on the neighboring park. Baseball's flying to that area. The facilities there aren't good. There's a porta potty, which myself really wouldn't go into. So, but when I look at Kuffner Field, the grass infield, this is what we want this age of kids. Kindergartners and first graders just learning how to play baseball. They see this field, they see the grass infield, they get excited to play baseball. And this is what we're trying to keep the enthusiasm of these young kids to play the game. Like Jody said, having the park nearby, having the facilities, is a great opportunity, I think, for the town of Superior to reach out to the families of Superior and to Louisville and say, hey, come here and play. It's a great opportunity. So thank you very much.
And Mike, can I ask you a question, if that's okay? How many, and Jody too, how many hours per week for that 8-week period are you
I think we're requesting 6 hours, and that's primarily on Saturdays.
It would be, primarily on Saturdays. We were asking
Let's have him, or come up to the mic. Just
I'm sorry, so that'd be six hours on Saturdays for an April and May and the first week of June.
So 48 hours basically for 8 weeks. That's very reasonable.
Okay, thank you. Let's do additional public comment, and then we'll circle back in.
Okay, I just wanted to clarify, if we did we talk about 6 hours on Saturday or 6 hours for the week that possibly be 4 hours on a Saturday?
There was no, it was up to 6 hours for the week, was
Okay.
was what ProStack had agreed upon, was not necessarily all on not necessarily all on Saturday, but that the staff would have the ability to determine where those 6 hours would go.
Okay.
Okay, additional public comment.
Peter Bottomley, Chair of ProStack, and I just wanted to read to you the recommendation that ProStack made. So when we were presented at our February meeting just a few weeks ago, we made the following recommendation by a vote of 5-3. The committee would like to recommend that the board consider allowing town staff the ability to schedule up to 6 hours per week at Kuffner Field for T-ball specific activities for the months of April through June as a trial period to be reviewed at the conclusion of the trial. So we went back and forth with several pros and cons on this issue. Obviously, it was not a unanimous vote. It was 5-3. But ultimately, largely what they've said about the reasons for wanting to have T-ball here, we agreed with.
Can I?
Question? Okay.
Yes, and so the three that said no, what were their reasons?
The primary reason was that Founders Park was never supposed to be programmed. The town staff and the board have agreed to program the shelter since then. They've agreed to program the slack line for specific, town programs. And so now the possibility of programming the baseball field kind of just, they were concerned that that is overstepping the neighborhood park description, and that it would weigh on the goodwill between the town and the neighboring residents of that park. There was also some concerns about it being unfair to other organizations such as soccer and Ultimate, who might want to program the general grass area of that upper field, because right now we're just talking about programming the baseball diamond. There was also some concern about insufficient parking, though the Monarch is basically, Little League has basically agreed to push their parking into the Target and the mall rather than use up the street parking around the park. And then the only other thing was that we did specify 6 hours for the week, so not to be programmed all on Saturday and not necessarily to be programmed all for Monarch Little League. There might be other organizations such as YMCA that do want to program this baseball field, and we left it open-ended, the recommendation open-ended, that it's not just Monarch Little League that would program it. I mean, staff is going to have to work with anyone that wants to come in and program the baseball field.
Okay. Trustee Goopers.
Patrick, can you come up for, just I want to hear the town's perspective on this.
Patrick Hammer, town staff. We were present with Jody and Monarch Little League at the Pro Stack meeting, and kind of weighed in with our opinions as they were brought up. I think what ultimately drove kind of the 6-hour recommendation was the hesitation of potentially having programs all day at Founders Park on a Saturday, and also the idea of if you needed to do a couple practices in the evening and then maybe a Saturday morning worth of games, that might be something that worked for Monarch Little League, worked for the neighbors around the park, and worked for the parking situation. We also talked a little bit about things like added maintenance, which from staff's perspective isn't a huge deal. We're already maintaining those fields at a high level similar to the other ball fields. And then to kind of go along with what Peter was saying, if another group would make a request, town staff has never really been in the business of saying one group can and one group can't. We do put the onus on those groups to get their submission for their field request into us as quickly as possible, and if we can accommodate those, we will. There hasn't been any other requests recently, and Monarch has been the first group to specifically request the ball field. We have received lots of requests for other parts of the park, which we don't program. We just let people know that those are basically a first-come, first-served type of use. And the intention would be to leave the boulders and keep those fields divided so you can have multiple users.
Thank you.
Okay. Trustee Pennington.
Coal Creek Drive is slated for repair. When is that going to happen, and how would that affect, certainly going to affect parking along Coal Creek Drive?
So yeah, you'll start to see those improvements early summer. And so people will just have to use Sycamore primarily.
Early summer meaning?
May, probably start in May.
So it would probably overlap with all this?
Yeah, probably. But it'll just be on, Coal Creek from 4th, basically, up to 76.
And how do you see handling the street parking? Because we've already gotten lots of concerns expressed for various other reasons about street parking.
I think we would definitely probably reach out to Alex Arnello and our staff, work with Monarch Little League or any other user group, and we've even internally talked about potentially setting up specific signage of where parking is and isn't appropriate.
Okay.
Yeah, we can work with the groups ahead of time for that.
And do we work with Superior Marketplace to make sure it's okay with those? Is it our right to park within Superior Marketplace for baseball? Or do we have to be granted that right?
Yeah, I think that's something that we would have to look into, but we've communicated with them on other events such as the Morgul, and we would be happy to reach out the same here just to
Yeah.
make sure that we're all on the same page. Absolutely.
Okay. Any other questions of Patrick? Then I'd like to take an additional public comment, and then we can have a brief discussion on this and wrap up. Any additional public comment, whether or not related to this topic or not, please come on forward. Go ahead.
Hello, Heather Craycraft with the Superior Chamber of Commerce. I just wanted to also let you know that Monarch Little League are active chamber members and actually have moved themselves up the level of our membership level so that they can reach out more in the community and be a part of it. So if that helps make your decision, they are definitely participating heavily in our community.
Thank you. Any additional public comment on consent or non-agenda items? Yes, one more.
Good evening, Board. George Kuffner, Superior, Colorado. I have two little items I'd like to speak about. One of them is item number 9. I don't want you to forget my baseball parks across the road. They've been promised to me a long time ago. Just get them worked in there. I'd like an answer on it. Secondly, I want to know what the town offers its senior citizens and its veterans. I know of nothing that the board or the town offers these people. Could I have an answer on that? I approached 2 board members about a month ago, and I haven't heard anything back one way or the other. So I'll bring it now. Please give me an answer on what they do for their veterans and their senior citizens. Thank you.
Thank you.
Can I ask George a question?
Go ahead.
George, what is your opinion on this proposal to have T-ball games at Founders Park? You live right there.
I'm 100% behind it. It gives the kids an opportunity, someplace to play other than the streets, or sit at home, watch TV. So I appreciate it if you take that in consideration.
Thank you. Any additional public comment? Come on forward.
My name is Stacy Alexander, and I live at 1317 Washburn Avenue in Erie, and that's in Boulder County as well. I'm director for the Flatirons Responsible Energy Action Project, FREE. It's much shorter. And we're a new grassroots organization consisting of a very diverse group of people from all over Boulder County and the Front Range. We come from all walks of life. We're business people from small and large companies. We're innovators, we're teachers, we're single moms, we're veterans, we're retired people, current service people, and all kinds of moms and dads. And we are coming together because we believe that we can protect Colorado's natural gifts and responsibly extract the affordable and abundant energy in our local community. I'm a little nervous, sorry, thank you. It's our goal to be a resource for friends and neighbors and community members about oil and gas development because we all deserve affordable, reliable, and safe energy sources. We are advocating for responsible increased domestic production, which keeps prices low, and this is a positive outcome for lots of reasons. And one is for your municipal budget. Your heating of the buildings goes down, your fuel costs go down, asphalt costs go down, water pipes, fertilizer, all those examples. It's a positive outcome for our Colorado families and our Front Range families too, because we all need affordable energy to heat our house, cook our meals, and clean our clothes, drive our kids to practice in Little League, and have internet access for homework. We are not against alternative energy by any means. In fact, we believe that oil and gas supports these as well. fiberglass wind turbines, for example, and the petroleum products that lubricate them just helped Colorado become number 7 in the nation of new clean energy jobs. And this is the mostly came from the wind and power sector. I'm very proud of that. I think that's a standard for everyone to look at. And also, oil and gas products work when the wind isn't blowing or the sun isn't shining. I'm not asking for anything. I just wanted to raise awareness of who I am and what we're doing. Flatiron's Responsible Energy Action. We have a Facebook page. Please come and visit us. We want to start common sense conversations for the community. And I want to thank you for this opportunity. I know this is a hard job and it comes after everything else that you do. So thank you, and I'm honored to be here and be a part of this system. Thank you very much for the time.
Thank you.
Thank you for comments. Any additional public comment? Any additional public comment? One more.
Good evening, Jim Payne, Superior resident. Just wanted to add to the mayor's list of upcoming activities at the annual HOA-sponsored Egg Hunt, which is open to the entire town, is on Saturday, March 28th at 1 p.m. at Purple Park. And maybe we can look at some way of having that incorporated into the calendar.
Thank you for mentioning that. I appreciate that.
Thank you.
Yes. Any additional public comment? Okay, let's have a brief discussion on the use of the field and go from there. Who'd like to start?
From the time we decided to build such a nice field, this discussion was inevitable. And I really personally support the use of the field for the T-ball as requested and as recommended by ProStack. The only hesitation I have and wish we could do something about before this starts and gets locked in is to reach out to that neighborhood, because they have been told that this would not be programmed. This park would not be programmed. And they've been told that many times, and I think it's obligatory for us to reach out to them and at least let them know that we're doing this on a trial basis for a limited and trying to control the parking and so forth, and the time, and we're limiting it to 6 hours.
Trustee
so
Dizelle.
forth.
I think it's an excellent idea to allow this actually programmed activity, because I love to be able to drive by there and see kids actually playing there. That's where you build a park for. And you build a ball diamond or ball field, you should be able to use it. And the only way to keep things organized and not have people showing up thinking they have the park is to have it programmed. You know, because there might be multiple people trying to use it at once, and we're not talking about an inordinate amount of time every week. So I think on a trial basis, it's very reasonable talking about 6 hours a week being programmed for T-ball, which is exactly the reason that we built the park.
Trustee Rivers?
Yeah, I am completely in favor of this on a trial basis, and I think Jody's pledged that next year, you know, should everything go well, you're not going to come back and say, well, 6 hours was good, how about 18 now? You know, if you stick to, you know, your pledge, I think that's very, very reasonable. So I'm in favor, and I would come and I coach kids when my kids were playing baseball, so it's a great age, it's a great place to learn, it's a great field too, perfect for it. So,
Trustee Pennington?
I'm actually a little bit more bifurcated on this one. I agree with Joe that we need to communicate with the community well on this particular thing. My recollection actually is that when we had the public meetings, which were not that greatly attended on Founders, there was a lot of interest in having some level of programming there as community building, you know, to be able to have, you know, there's a lot of aging community over there who could pull their lawn chairs up and watch. And somehow, I believe the representation at the ProStack level was non-programming, but I've always been a little concerned about whether or not that jibed with what we heard in those community meetings, which, as I had recalled, that's why I asked the question of George when he was up there. So, in a normal set of circumstances, if this had come, I wish this had come before us in November, where we had the time to go out to the community and build consensus over this trial. That's what I wish. But I'm not sensing you guys want to wait till April of 2016. So I would put together a combination plan. I think we've got to go out to the community and inform, if we go ahead with this, inform them that this is going to happen. It is a trial. It is only for T-ball. And it seems to me you're going to have to get in sync with what the 6-hour max meant. Okay, because I'm hearing different things, that 6-hour max may mean 3 hours on a Saturday and 3 hours practice time during the week. I would really, really appeal to staff to get the parking situation 100% nailed down, because we don't want the trial to fail based on problems with parking, and we are going to be tearing up that whole one street. Okay, so so let's do it right. Let's give the trial a fair chance. Let's bring the community in on the issue, and then I can support it as a trial.
Okay, Mayor Pro Tem Williams.
I really appreciate you coming forward with your proposal and your concerns and issues. And to give you full consideration, I have to also hear the opposing views as well, and they're not here to talk about that. So I feel just a little, it's a little uncomfortable at this time for me to say one way or another without hearing both sides. And I thought we bought or built the park in the first place to play on it. So I don't see any harm in it, but I absolutely need to hear both sides. Thanks for coming.
Okay, Trustee Hanson.
Yeah, so it wasn't too long ago that we had, before we finished the park, there was user groups that were consuming that park, and there was really 1 or 2 user groups that were consuming that park for many hours on the weekends. And that was the big concern with the original town residents, and that was one of the driving factors of making it a neighborhood park and not allowing it to be programmable. Since Founders Park was finished, the chairman of ProStack mentioned that we allowed the shelter on an interim basis to be programmable, and it isn't for the entire week. It is really just for certain hours on Saturdays, and I think it was 2 or 3 sessions, 2 or 3 2-hour sessions on a Saturday, but it had to be done by 6 p.m. and all that. And I don't think that there was any issues at all with that trial run. I think that that is actually a permanent fixture now. So I absolutely support this, just to see how it goes. Let's see what happens. There was some concern and discussion about parking, but I think that that can be dealt with okay. The tearing up that road could be an issue, but I think that most of the parking is going to happen on the opposite side. And the other thing that was mentioned in the ProStack meeting that didn't come up tonight is that it's not like you have 20 teams show up all at once and you've got hundreds of people there at once. You have a couple of teams come up with their family members, and they cycle through after the games. And the goal was to try and get, 4 games in during a day. So you'd see those teams cycle through, and the parents and the siblings. So I don't think there's going to be an issue. I'm looking forward to seeing how it works. So I support it.
Okay. This type of field was built for this type of activity, and for it not to be used, to me, it's a complete waste of money for the town. So to me, it's a no-brainer to use it for this activity. I agree with the trial period, and I think that we should have engagement, but we're having this discussion now because we're not meeting the second meeting in March, and they need an answer, and we don't need to make this more complicated than it is. So yes, let's have discussions in tandem with a trial period, but let's get this done. This is a no-brainer to me. Trustee Pennington.
As a little marketing thing with Superior Marketplace businesses, this traffic is only good for business. you know, so.
Absolutely. Okay, so.
Especially if you park over there. Go to near Target. So.
I don't know if we need to take a vote, a straw poll, what type of mechanism you want to do here
I think based on the discussion, I have the direction.
to move forward.
Kendra,
Okay.
are you happy with that?
If you understand, that's fine.
Okay, so we're moving forward. Feel free to stick around for the rest of the meeting if you'd like, or
Thank you.
you can.
On behalf of them, I'm going to
Thank
take
you,
that.
Joe.
You're going to be tested on the bond discussions.
Thank you, everybody.
Okay. Thanks for coming to our meeting.
Thank you, guys.
I'm delayed that charge.
Thank you.
I do. Okay, next on our item, our agenda is presentations, Superior Chamber of Commerce update. Ms. Craycraft.
Thank you. Town Board, hello, I'm Heather Craycraft with the Superior Chamber of Commerce, and I appreciate the time on the agenda. Just wanted to give you some exciting news from a business standpoint. We just discussed the potential of increasing our businesses by encouraging those young baseball players to go get their pizza and everything at Costco, which I will do anything in my power to make sure they have any discounts and updates from all the local vendors for sure. We are at the point in the year for the community directory to be assembled, so we are actively making that happen, and hopefully I will have that in your hands before the next time you sit around this table. And at that time, the Chamber does do basically our year report of how many members we have, where they come from, which I always find so interesting, and really at what level are our members engaged. So we currently have 203 members. More than 80 of those members are at a higher level than the standard membership, which is very exciting for us at the Chamber. That means they want to be involved in this community. They want to actively engage the residents. They want to be part of each other's activities in the community. Of those approximately 200 members, 32 of those have, only 32% have Superior addresses. We have a 68% that live outside of this town, and that is one of the things that makes our community so unique. It does afford us the opportunity to attract businesses that are not necessarily competing with those that are here within our town boundaries, and I want to make sure you understand that I don't go out and try to get 3 other frozen yogurt establishments to compete with our wonderful Tutti Frutti that is over here. It is more about the individual business owners that really want to be part of the community. They want to come to Chili Fest. They want to be part of the interactions we have with really throughout the region. And of those that are outside of our town, 22% of those actually live here. So I think that's an important factor. And then 31% are actually in Louisville, in our sister community just across the bridge. So those are numbers that we find very interesting. It continues to challenge us to get more members inside the town boundaries, and whether they have a retail establishment or those that we know many work out of their homes and run successful businesses, whether they're individual entrepreneurs or hire many other people in the neighborhood. So I want to make sure you had those numbers.
Thank you very much. Next is 6B, update on the town water use and supply with special counsel, Paul Zillis.
Thank you, Mayor. I invited Paul Zilas here tonight. Paul's our special counsel to the town with regard to matters related to Superior's various water supplies. He represents the town in matters regarding our water rights, including adjudication of water rights, plans of augmentation, and water transfers in our water court, appeals to the Colorado Supreme Court, acquisition sales, and any other water-related issues. Paul is here tonight. Come on up, Paul, to update and discuss with the board the town's overall water use and supply, and also the status of the Windy Gap Firming Project.
Thanks, Matt.
Yep.
It's good to see everybody. I'm Paul Zilas, and I'm not going to be quite as quick as the chamber presentation, but I'll try to keep it quick. And what I'm going to do tonight is kind of a hybrid. For you veteran board members, it's a review. For you new board members, it's a overview. And it's about the 30,000-foot level look at water rights for the Superior. But, in looking at that, I'm going to go over real quick, just for review, kind of Water Law 101, 60 seconds maybe. And then I'm going to get into a little bit of federal permitting. So it's kind of like doing Water Law 101 introductory course and then a quick graduate course, and we'll get it all done in 15 minutes. No problem. But, so what I want to cover tonight is what our portfolio looks like, and what kind of water supply we have going forward, and what our demands are now, and what we are projecting for the future. And then, as Matt said, the biggest project we're participating in right now is the Windy Gap Firming project. And huge headway has been made in the last year, so I've got some good news on that, and I'll give you an update on to where that's going. So the portfolio for Superior is made up of three components. One are Windy Gap units, one are Colorado Big Thompson units, and the last are some ditch shears. And just for purposes of review and overview, what happened to Superior, as you're well aware, is that it was the last community really to develop in Boulder County. And so all of the senior water rights that were available locally had already been purchased by Louisville, Lafayette, Longmont, Boulder. So Superior was in a situation where if it was going to develop at all, it could not rely on the local sources. So it went to this big project to find them. And, put it all in perspective, when you look at ditch shears, they are based on what they call the appropriation doctrine, and that's a priority system. So the older, more senior water rights have the right to the water during shortages, dry parts of the year, rather than the junior water rights, the newer ones. And so this allowed us to take part in a really huge project that I'll talk about in just a second here, and has allowed us to have a good, firm water supply for the present and going on to the future. One thing I will just brief you on real quick, you're going to hear two units tonight that you never hear. One is an acre foot, and an acre foot is 325,851 gallons. It covers 1 acre, 1 foot deep, and 1 acre foot is enough water to supply roughly 2 single-family homes for a year. So that kind of puts it all in relation to what we've got. The other thing is that, or that we'll talk about, is a rate of flow, and that's a cubic foot per second. And a cubic foot per second, or a CFS, is 448 gallons per minute. And the easiest math that you'll hear all night is if you divert 1 CFS for 24 hours, it results in 2 acre feet. So the bottom line is that Superior did a great job at coming up with a water portfolio, even though it was the last community to develop. The Windy Gap units, we'll talk about those in a little more detail. The designed yield from that project is 100 acre feet per unit. The CBT project, there's 310,000 total units, and the yield of that is anywhere between a half acre foot and 1 acre foot per unit. So the use of the term units is very different for those two sources. And then the ditch shares, we own ditch shares that we can use for raw water, for irrigation, and we have some shares that we can use for municipal use. But so you can understand what project we have that we're using. This map is really helpful. So the CBT project was actually built in reaction to the Dust Bowl in the 30s. And it includes Lake Granby on the west slope, and then it's taken through the Adams Tunnel near Grand Lake, and it goes through the whole CBT system, and it includes Horsetooth Reservoir in Fort Collins, Carter Lake in Loveland, and Boulder Reservoir here. And what Superior did many years ago, not many years ago, but 15 years ago, they built a project to deliver water all the way from Carter Lake and Loveland to Superior. And there's about 30 communities that took place in that, but it's gave us the opportunity to actually take direct delivery of this water. So it really has been just a huge water supply for the town, and allowed Superior to be what it is today. The really interesting attribute of CBT units, which is important as I go on tonight, is that it's the only water right I know of that yields more water in dry years. And the reason it does is it was built again in reaction to the Dust Bowl. And so farmers had irrigation rights, and in dry years that didn't yield enough water. So you get more water in dry years. In wet years, as a supplemental source, they figure you need less water. So as I said a minute ago, CBT yields between half an acre foot and a full acre foot. And when things get most interesting for Superior in wet years, because suddenly that yield is cut in half. And we'll talk about that in more detail as we go on. But that's the overview of the whole system. And by the way, I'm going to cover a lot of ground tonight, so please feel free to interrupt with any questions. So the good news for Superior, I'm going to go through real quick of how much water we use. Since we reached build-out, it's very interesting along the Front Range, and Superior is no different, that people have started conserving water more. Since the drought in 2002, you've seen the use by individuals in single-family homes decrease quite a bit. So despite building a lot of new homes, the water supply has been pretty steady for potable water. It's been, this year was only 1,369 acre feet. 2012 was 1,500 acre feet. And one thing that's really important to understand for Superior system is that potable water is used for indoor use and for irrigation of residential lawns. So it makes a lot more sense in 2012, where we had that really dry year, that you'd use more potable water. But it has made planning really, really easy for us so far until the town center starts coming online and everything, because it's been a pretty constant demand. This is just a graphical depiction, and as you can see, it's by month, and those are the last 3 years that it's been really close every year. And then even as you go to the really long term, once we reach build out, it's been right about that 1,500 acre foot level. So we've got a really great idea of what we're using now. And then, the question coming up is, what are future demands going to be? And I'll give you a little preview that Superior is probably in better shape than most communities, that we really could have all the water resources in place to at least come close to reaching build out, which is an incredibly fortunate situation.
Paul?
Yeah.
How does Superior compare acre foot usage on average to other communities like Louisville, Lafayette, Boulder, and all that?
It's all directly tied to population.
So per population?
Yeah. So it's a per capita use, and the per capita use right now in Superior is about 0.4 of an acre foot per home. And that's really very consistent with Erie. I represent Erie, so I know all their numbers really well. And they use about 3,500 acre feet a year. It's a bigger community, and they don't have the reuse system, great segue, that I'm about to talk about, to make reuse water available. They just built it, so they're getting that in place. And one of the benefits of Superior coming on as such a recent community is that there weren't the senior water rights available, but it allowed Superior to design an incredibly efficient system. So we have a great reuse system where we reuse Windy Gap water, and we use that for our parks and open space. And I should note that one of the biggest differences, besides the volume that you get per unit, the Windy Gap water is unique because you can reuse it. And a little known fact is that about 90 to 95% of water you use in your home actually returns through your wastewater treatment plant. And so we've got a sophisticated system to use that water for irrigation. Does that answer your question?
Yeah, just on average per capita, are we about the same usage as other communities?
We're actually probably a little more efficient, to be honest. And I think, again, it's a newer system, and we've got a highly educated population, and I think people have been conserving. Yeah.
Thanks.
So the non-potable system is a lot like our potable system. There's some variety depending on the year and the climate. But as you can see, in 2013 and 2014, it was almost exactly the same. And we get our water both from reuse, and again, that's only from the Windy Gap. You can't reuse CBT water. And then we have the raw water, the ditch shares. And we try to use both, and we use about 500 acre feet a year.
Can I?
Sure.
How do you know you're using the Windy Gap and not the CBT?
What you do is a monthly accounting. And the beauty of being in that big integrated system, so, Windy Gap and CBT are coming through the exact same facilities, is that every month I can tell the Northern Colorado Water Conservancy District how much water I'm going to designate for Windy Gap and how much for CBT. And then your account is debited accordingly.
And so why with CBT can you not reuse it?
It's in the water decree. There's no right to reuse.
Okay.
Yeah, so the CBT system, a little bit of history, when they built it, again, in reaction to the Dust Bowl, it was very sophisticated engineering, and they were very reliant on the return flows by the irrigator. So, use it upstream, the return flows go, then the next guy uses it and take it all the way to the state line, actually.
So it goes downstream.
Yeah. And then the Windy Gap project, it was built as an add-on to the CBT project. And it's a much smaller project. It was built by 7 cities, and now there's 15 cities that have rights. But it was a more junior water right, but it's got the right to reuse. So it's a really important component of our system. And by the way, there's going to be a tour again this spring of the whole CBT project and the Windy Gap project, and I highly recommend it. Some of the board members who were on the bus with me one year. But it's really, I think, a good education.
When would that be?
I think this year it's going to be in May, but we'll have information coming into the town.
After the road opens.
Yeah, yeah. And they do both the East Slope and a West Slope tour. Because, and even the West Slope tour takes, what was it, Joe, 10 hours?
Yeah.
Yeah. But it's really, really educational, I think. So then again, looking at the water use, as I said a minute ago, Superior is very fortunate that it's been pretty consistent. And with the non-potable water, it's directly tied to how dry of a summer you have. 2012, believe it or not, was a hotter and drier summer than the drought of 2002. And the town staff has just gotten better and better at being efficient with the irrigation water. So we're really maximizing that. So looking at going forward, the state of the water address for 2014, right now, or as of November 1st, which is the beginning of the water year, nothing could be simple here. So you have the beginning of the water year, you got the calendar year, and then you have 2 water years. But let's start on November 1st. We had 1,456 acre feet already stored in Lake Granby. So that is about enough to meet potable demands. And then going forward, we can add to that amount. So what the Northern Board does is they give an initial allocation on November 1st for CBT water of a half an acre foot per unit. And then they kind of look at how the season is progressing, and they do a supplemental allocation in the spring. So we still have to wait to see how that comes out. And then the Windy Gap water, that hasn't pumped yet. So we'll see how that looks when it starts pumping. The good news is, no matter what, I promise that you won't run out of water. There's a lot of flexibility by owning water rights in both the Windy Gap and the CBT, where we keep our finger on the pulse on a daily basis. And if we don't get supplemental allocations, there's other ways to firm up the water. And again, at the 30,000 foot level, I won't go into details, but we're in good shape. So the Windy Gap project, I'm going to focus on that more than anything right now, because that is the reason for the Windy Gap firming project, which is going to be a big capital project for Superior. So as I said, the Windy Gap project was an add-on to the CBT project. CBT was built in the 50s. The Windy Gap project wasn't finished until the 80s. And the problem with the Windy Gap project is that in dry years, it's a more junior water right, back to the priority system. So it has a lower yield. The double whammy with the Windy Gap project is that in really wet years, it has 0 yield, because if Lake Granby spills, both Windy Gap and CBT go into Lake Granby. By contract, Windy Gap water is the first water to spill. So it's a project that has been an add-on, and since day one, the proponents know that we have to have what we call a firming project. In other words, another reservoir to store water in the good years, so in the really dry years and the really wet years, you've already got water in storage. And I just went through that. But it really is a big deal for Superior, and I'll show you some numbers here in a minute.
Can I ask you one other question?
Yeah.
So where has that water been going when it isn't being stored in a facility or in a reservoir that we don't have right now? Where is it going? And just let's start there.
You know what? That's a great question. So what happens is Windy Gap is a pumping project. And like last year in 2014, they never pumped because Granby was spilling. And so it just goes down the river. It goes down the Colorado River, and it's just a shame because everything's in place except for that second storage reservoir.
So who gets it? That was my next question.
You know, what's that?
Arizona?
Yeah, Arizona gets it. Las Vegas gets a little. No, so it's, especially in the really wet years, there's not enough use on the West Slope for it. So it's great rafting flows until the state line, and then it goes to the other Colorado River compact states.
So will this make an impact in any way downstream?
It will allow us to divert about another 60,000 acre feet a year, which in the big picture is very, very little, because, again, what's really interesting is that because Windy Gap is a more junior water right, the Windy Gap firming project will only pump in the peak of the spring runoff anyway. So it's not like we'll be, depleting the Colorado River in August. And I don't know how much you guys are aware of the water politics in Colorado, but the West Slope versus East Slope. I like our brothers on the West Slope, but it really is the Hatfield and McCoys. And, throughout the permitting process, it's been a real struggle. But we're getting there, and the West Slope's actually going to get a lot of benefits. I'll get into that in just a minute. But anyway, so the Windy Gap Firming Project is just going to be a big reservoir, about 90,000 acre feet. And again, what it's going to allow us to do is in the really good years, those years right in the middle, you store more than 100 acre feet per unit so that it averages out to around 100 acre feet per unit on a reliable, firm basis. And it's been in the process. This is kind of a shock, but water moves at glacial speeds since 2001. And there's 13 participants, of which Superior is one of them. And the participants and the Northern District have worked extremely hard on this project. We're very much involved for Superior, but the name of the reservoir is Chimney Hollow, and as you can see on this map, it's right next to Carter Lake, just west of Carter Lake. It's an off-stream reservoir, so there won't be any riparian habitat lost. And the participants actually bought the land probably 8-9 years ago. There was a deal to be had. Hewlett-Packard owned it, and it was one owner, and so we were able to actually purchase the site. So we're way ahead on that with the way land prices are going up now.
One other thing,
Yeah.
is there going to be a pipe that goes through that berm or
Yeah,
the?
yeah. So
I don't know,
that'll
it's not a
connect
berm, it's a huge berm.
well, it's a big berm. But yeah, so there'll be a pipe that connects it to Carter, and then that water is directly available to us through that Carter Lake pipeline. It's called the Southern Water Supply Project. And so there is kind of more of a picture of the site, and as you can see, it was purposely picked because it's a perfect reservoir site, but there's no riparian habitat, because anymore to build an on-stream reservoir is almost impossible with environmental regulations. And there's just a graphic of how it's going to be connected. So I know that we're running late. I'm not going to go through all the details. I've covered most of this anyway on these slides. So getting up to the federal permitting, this thing's been going since 2001, and the last 2 years have been absolutely great for the project. So the final environmental impact statement was finally published, and that was a huge victory. And then you get right into the rest of the permits. So the next one was the 1041 permit from Grand County. That is the state statute that gives counties the right to weigh in on projects. And as you can imagine, with the Hatfield and McCoys, with all due respect, it was a real battle, but I think that we got a very workable deal for the Firming project. And then just in December, the Bureau of Reclamation issued the Record of Decision, which is basically the permit for the project that comes after the environmental impact statement. And even more, contested, was a revised carriage agreement with the Bureau of Reclamation, because now we're taking water at different times of the year and everything else to deliver it to the Chimney Hollow Reservoir. So it was a huge deal to get that done. And there was a signing ceremony for both. It's called the ROD, Record of Decision, and the carriage agreement on the same day in December. And there was very positive press from both the West Slope and the East Slope, because I think Northern and the participants worked really hard with the West Slope to get something that works. So going forward, the 4 remaining permits that we still need to get is one thing called a 401 certification. That's a water quality certification from the state, from the Water Quality Control Department. That permit's been submitted, and we're hoping to get that by June. Then there's the 404 permit. You probably heard of that. Those are permits for wetlands. There will be some wetland impacts. That's already been submitted to the Army Corps of Engineers, and we're hoping for that in June. And then we've got an intergovernmental agreement, an IGA, with the West Slope. And that comprised of all these benefits for the West Slope. That's how we're going to make the whole thing work. One entity is held out on signing it. It's known as the Colorado River Water Conservation District. That district was formed back in reaction to the CBT project for the history lesson to protect West Slope interests. And the hope is to get them to finally sign off this month. They had a few more conditions, and I think we're really close on that. And then the fourth challenge is going to be we'll have to file a water application in water court to amend the decree to include the terms in that IGA, because there's going to be water release for environmental purposes. We're doing improvements to wastewater treatment plants, all kinds of benefits for the West Slope. Yeah.
Sorry.
No problem.
So this IGA, is this something that the town of Superior will be signing?
No.
No.
So it was signed on behalf of the participants by the Windy Gap Firming Project Enterprise.
Okay.
And it was also signed by the Northern Colorado Water Conservancy District and the Municipal Subdistrict, which is Windy Gap, because it affects all of that.
Thank
Yeah,
you.
sure.
Great information. So a couple of questions. One is that I know in December, as you said, it says here the feds commit $300 million for the water for the Windy Gap firming. Did they provide as much money as we thought they would? Does that mean we need more money, or is the money that we've already committed the amount
I'm not
of money?
sure what you're reading from.
Out of the Denver Post?
That that's, it's funny that newspapers do a really, good effort to publish accurate water articles, but it's usually not accurate.
Okay, so the only question I guess I have, and I don't expect an answer right now, but does this mean, is there any additional funds that we might need to provide, or we already budgeted all the funds that we need as one of the 13 participants in the Windy Gap firming project?
So the answer is, again, I don't know what that article said, but what they did is they cleared the way for us to spend $300 million.
Okay, because I read it both ways here, but it said the feds committed $300 million.
Yeah, that'd be great.
But feds allowed us to
spend
$300 million.
yeah.
Okay. And then will the water, when it overflows, I understand what you were talking about that, and then will this Chimney Hollow Reservoir go up and down?
Yep.
Every year?
Yeah.
Based on if more water is overflowing from Granby?
From Granby.
From Granby, then we would release water, or somebody would release water probably out of the Chimney Hollow?
So the way it operates right now is that Granby's the big bucket. It's almost 500,000 acre feet, and that's got CBT and Windy Gap, and that's operated just for those projects. Chimney Hollow, every participant's going to have its own little pool in there. So we'll have 4,800 acre feet that's ours, and we take it when we want it, we leave it there when we don't want it, and so that's how it'll operate.
Can we make that into an indoor pool?
We can have a little boating just in our section.
Can we just put a little boundaries?
Swimming section, yeah.
Okay, all right, thank you.
So, Paul, it's great to see you again.
Yeah, good to see you.
And I think you have an ability to take very complicated and, sometimes obtuse concepts and describe them in a way that's understandable to everybody. So, thanks for your presentation.
I appreciate it.
So, the two remaining permits, you said June, best case scenario. The IGA, do you have any timeline for that?
Well, that one we're hoping to get signed this month.
Oh, okay.
And what happened with the River District is they had 3 conditions that were all met with the record of decision. They needed 3 additional little assurances. I won't go into detail.
Okay.
But now they want to have another bite at the apple for the power plant at Glenwood Springs that you've all driven by. What that does is that forces water down the Colorado River, which is great for the West Slope because it keeps all the flows in the river. So without going into detail, that's the last hang-up, but I think we're very close.
Like, did you expect these 4 remaining, permits and IGAs by the end of 2015 to be?
That's our goal. That is our goal. And then
what happens after that?
Well, if we got just a minute.
Yeah.
2 minutes. So what I did is I just made some brief notes. They now that we have the 4 big ones here, I think Northern finally feels like we can actually put a tentative schedule out for finishing this up. So right now, that's all the stuff, the 4 that I mentioned, the hopeful scenarios is done by November. And then they're going to put out a design RFP for the reservoir in May. They want to have answers by November. And then they want to have the design completed by August of 2017, agency approval by the next March, and then the construction would be from June 18th through June 21st. June of 2018 through June 2021.
That matches what it said in here.
Oh, there we go. Yeah.
Sorry.
Now, if we could just get the feds to pay us $300 million.
I know.
We'd be right.
Okay.
Just one question
Sure.
for staff is, and Paul, you might know this, is what is the ongoing budget impact of our participation in the firming project?
I believe what we have budgeted is 14 million, 8 million of which we have, and then we'll need to finance the other 6 million.
And to address that issue, you guys, on the schedule, I'm trying to get through this quick, but what Northern wants to do is review all of the financing options that are available for all the participants starting this month through August, select a financing mechanism by November, and then the construction funding, the big dollars, will be due in June of 2018. So that's kind of the schedule, and it's been a very interesting process with 13 participants. Some can cash fund it, some want to go out on their own, some want to do group financing, and we've been working really hard to find something that will work for everybody. And I'll coordinate, obviously, closely with staff here to work through all that.
So is it fair to assume, Matt, that by 2018 we'll have more than 8 million saved, I guess?
Yeah,
No?
that's fair.
Trustee Hansen.
So I was having a conversation with a gentleman several months ago about water, and he does a lot of research on water and seems to be very knowledgeable about it. And he seemed to think that the way we use water, the way water is allocated, is going to change dramatically in the next several years. And he felt that the federal government was actually going to have more control of water and say how water is divided. And I wanted to see if you know anything about this, what your thoughts are on that.
Sure. There's a lot
and then
of...
what the impact would be, if there is something out, what the impact of our participation in Windy Gap is.
Sure. So there's been a lot, every year, bills come up in front of the legislature, and there's referendums and initiatives. There was an initiative for 2 years running. There wasn't one last year, and it's not there this year, but what he might have been referring to is what they call the public trust doctrine. And the public trust doctrine is where you'd completely change the water law system in Colorado. It would belong to the public, and then you'd have this process where it would be divvied up. And the reason I just can never see that happening is that it would strip everybody of their constitutional rights, because water's treated as real property. So you can't just take the water rights away. And I don't know what the gentleman was referring to, but yeah, the federal government is taking more and more control of water resources in Colorado through the Endangered Species Act, and through operations. And the big one is the Colorado River Compact. There's 7 states, and maybe that's what he's referring to, that the feds are really getting involved and making sure that the 7 states are getting their fair share. But the bottom line is, for the Windy Gap Firming Project, I think this is really interesting, is that Northern, who I think is a really good organization, did a bunch of computer modeling, and they took a lot of that into account, I should say. And when you take everything into account, under their best estimates, the 15 units will not yield 1,500 acre feet, but it will yield 1,283 acre feet, which is still fantastic. It's 85 acre feet per unit. But again, I don't know what the conversation was, but yeah, the federal government is getting more and more involved. In fact, the Forest Service just passed another directive to control groundwater on U.S. Forest Service lands. You see it every day.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Is one of the 7 states California?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
And, when we have more time, one of my funnest things I do every year is I lecture a bunch of 5th graders on the Colorado River Compact. And what I do is I go into a room and I have them divide up, and 2 or 3 will each represent one state. And I say, and here's all the benefits you get. Now you guys divvy up the Colorado River. And they always come back, and I'm telling you, they are really smart, really intelligent. They got all these arguments, but it never fails. By the time they're done, they divvy up about 4 times as much water as there is in the Colorado River. And that's kind of what's going on now. So California, they have the lion's share, and we could talk about history maybe in another session, but the bottom line is, under the Colorado River Compact that was negotiated in 1922, there's 15 million acre feet about in the Colorado River, and the downstream states, that's Nevada, Arizona, California, get the first 7.5 million.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Can I ask one question in this whole scheme of things? How does the snow melt come into effect in this?
Snow melt is the source of water for all of us. And so, what's really interesting right now, 2014, as we all know, was a huge snow year. And so the problem right now is that Granby, Carter, and Horsetooth are filled to the brim. And then this winter, as you recall, started out pretty dry. It's wet again. Mm-hmm. So we'll see how it does, but they've got hydrologists working 24/7 to try to maximize the storage. But the estimate right now is that Lake Granby will spill at least 70,000 acre feet.
Wow.
So Arizona
And we could have taken, we could have taken
We could
all
have
that.
almost filled up Chimney Hollow. Chimney Hollow is 90,000 acre feet. And that's what hurts as a water rights lawyer, where you see these big years and you're going, man, if only that reservoir was built, that'd be storage for almost the full thing.
sorry, I have one more question.
One more, and then Art
Okay.
should wrap it up.
I was looking at the current and future potable water supply demands with adding in just growth and then the Superior Town Center. So we're at 2768 acre feet, and our shares total 2,800 about. And so that's enough. But my question is, I was hearkening back to talking about providing water to Louisville. Do we have enough water available to provide to Louisville if they needed it?
That's a great question, and the answer is that my understanding is that Louisville would provide their own raw water. So the question for us is, how much capacity will we have in the pipeline coming from Carter Lake if that's how they want to deliver water to our treatment plant? So,
Okay.
I'm working with staff to make sure that we don't, hurt ourselves with any of those negotiations.
Okay, so it wouldn't be coming out of, I thought it was coming out of our shares.
Yeah.
Okay, our units, okay.
Yeah.
It's actually their own units.
Yep, that we treat. Yep.
Okay, thank you.
And then, real quick, these numbers are, they're our best estimates right now. We're obviously going to have to do more studies to put a finer pencil to it, and you never want to operate a municipality where the future demand is 2,768 acre feet and your present yield is 2,806. You need more room than that. And it also points you guys to how important this Windy Gap firming project is. Out of that total, 1,283 is relying on getting that project built. And then just real quick, the non-potable is the same thing, where our demands could be 843, and with our current yields, we'd have 931 acre feet.
Okay, thank you very much.
Yeah, my pleasure.
All right, next on the agenda is the consent agenda, item number 7. Do we have any questions on the consent agenda?
I have a couple, some questions on, can I go through
Okay,
them?
sure.
Yeah, okay. Well, the first one was, I think Mayor, you've talked about that, I'm sorry, approval of minutes of the Board of Trustees for February 23rd, 2015. The last comment was a discussion about the Impact Sports Medicine proposal, but there was no notation there on the printed minutes about what the outcome was of that discussion. And I didn't know if that's in the, in the video or not, but I think we should have a notation of what the actual outcome was of that discussion and presentation. And then the next one was Historical Committee notes were not in my
Right.
packet. They were actually the OSAC's meeting notes, but that's only on the iLegislate, I think.
And I don't know how that happened. So we're working on it, and we'll get it fixed, and hopefully it never happens.
Not a complaint, just like I kept looking at it, I thought, must be pressing my fat fingers were pressing the wrong thing. Arbor Day proclamation, I love that. I would like to also talk about, could we put out some information about what kind of trees would be good replacement trees and shrubs?
This is information.
Yeah, this is information, because, we talk about planting trees, but we should really talk about, and then particularly if you look at the spruce trees, there was a great article in the Denver Post, I think last weekend, about what's happening with all the spruce trees, why they're brown. Some of them might die, some of them might come back, and that was really good information. Not all of them are expected to be dead, but some of them might be. But just some general information about tree maintenance and replacement. What would be good trees to replace in Superior? And the other thing is that I would really like if we could, maybe not for this Arbor Day, but by next year, would really like to be able to participate, have residents allowed to purchase trees and have them planted in memory of people or at memory locations throughout the town, or maybe in the open space behind their house. I know we've done that. Some of my neighbors have actually bought trees, and then Vargas have planted them for us, and it's worked out really well because they knew how to buy them, where to buy them from, and then where to plant them. But I think if we could create a program like that, that we could actually allow people to buy trees and then get them planted somehow, if we can get that planted. The question about, no, not that one. Excuse me, I'm sorry. This one is the adoption of resolution approving the agreement with Veris Environmental. it said the new contract is 42,000, but I don't know what last year's costs were. And then also, it says that Denver CPI adjustment is going to be implemented annually. I didn't know why. There was no definition of why. I mean, if you usually form a contract, you say what your price is going to be for the life of that contract. There's also there's already a plus fuel surcharge included in the contract, and it's talked about increasing the fees due to the fuel surcharge. But I'm interested in also on the reverse of that, would they also decrease the charges based on if fuel would go down? And then the annual report is due February 19th in the body of the document, but Exhibit C says no annual report is applicable. It's
Should we
NA.
pull this and discuss it?
Yeah,
And then,
I'm not sure what we're doing right now.
We need to pull it. If we want to talk about it, we need to pull it.
Okay, let's pull that.
Okay.
Or pull it. I thought if there was questions that could be answered, and
And you can always get those to me ahead of time if you want, and we can get them to you prior to the meeting, too.
yeah, okay, well, let's pull that one.
Let's pull.
And get a list of
Let's
questions.
pull it and bring it back, how about?
Okay, is it not time sensitive to?
No, we have time.
Okay,
So that's item E.
okay, so we'll pull E.
When it comes back, I'd like to see the competitive bid. It just said what the successful bid was.
Let's get a list, let's get questions to staff and have that
Okay.
before the meeting. so
I
that we can-
apologize, I just looked at this before the meeting,
Yeah, yeah,
so,
no,
and
that's
I made
fine.
my notes
Yeah, yeah.
right before,
Okay.
otherwise I would have done
Yeah.
that, but,
Any other items on the consent? I had one correction. There was public comment by two individuals, and one was listed as Ryan Hill, and it was actually Brian Hill, is the correct.
Okay.
That's corrected.
Great. Anything
So
else?
before, when you said, do we approve the agenda, we should have just pulled 7E then?
yes.
Yes.
Should have done that, yeah.
We should have.
Okay, no problem.
So we make a
You
motion
can make a motion
to approve the agenda.
Approve the agenda.
Without E.
Without E, exactly.
Without
Or approve the consent agenda
Yes.
without E.
I have one
Okay.
other question. Can I then pull item F too, so we can talk about that one?
The proclamation?
Yes.
Yes.
If it's just a question, then.
Okay, the question is, who came up with the Congress needs to pass a long-term multimodal transportation bill by March 31st, 2015? I think that's in the proclamation, that we're saying that we want Congress to pass something by May 31st, 2015. And that's kind of like a pie in the sky wish, and I'm not sure if we would do a proclamation like that as a town that says
Okay,
we're trying to
let's-
get Congress to
Let's pull
pass a
this.
bill.
Let's pull this as well, and we'll have a brief conversation on that. Okay, motion to
So I'd like
approve.
to make a motion to approve the consent agenda with 7A, 7B, 7C, 7D, pulling 7E and 7F.
Second.
Motion by Mayor Pro Tem Williams, second by Trustee Sorelli. Do we need we don't need a roll call vote, or yes, we do need a roll call vote because of D.
We're buying something?
Are
Yes,
we buying something or selling something?
we're buying something on D.
Buying.
Yeah, that's right, yeah.
Okay, Sorelli?
Yes.
Dozell?
Yes.
Folsom?
Yes.
Gagaris?
Yes.
Hanson?
Yep.
Pennington?
Yes.
Williams?
Yes.
Okay, thank you.
Can we discuss 7F though? or-
So 7E is getting pulled and coming back later. 7F, yeah, 7E is
So
tabled
further.
until further notice.
We'll bring it back in April.
7F was a proclamation that was provided to me and the other mayors at the Mayors and Commissioners Coalition meeting that I went to, and
This week or?
this week.
Okay.
And
Or last week?
last week, thank you.
My God.
And it was recommended that we put it forth and
So
approve
this
it.
is some of the other mayors have already,
I don't know who signed it and who's not.
And I didn't have a question with the proclamation. I had a question about the whereas, the second whereas,
Right.
where we're saying as a town, that we say Congress needs to pass a long-term multimodal transportation bill by May 31st, 2015.
Well, that, it's
We
going.
have no control over that. and
We
it has
don't,
nothing-
we don't. It's just that we're indicating, like most other municipalities to Congress, please do something on the highway bill. There's just, it's, like
This
everything
is,
else.
then this is more of a comment in future proclamations. I think that as a town, I don't think we should be stating a proclamation. Well, I don't even know if this is a proclamation as much. Now we're actually making a support of legislation, which is bigger than just a proclamation to.
Actually,
it's
we're
not
participating. This is what it sounds like to me, is what we would be participating in the festivities for Stand-Up Transportation Day. Is that correct?
That I don't have a problem with. I have a problem with saying that Congress needs to pass a law by May, which we don't even know what the bill is, and we don't know if it's even possible. That's the only paragraph or portion of this proclamation that I have a problem with, is that we're saying that we're behind a bill that we've never looked at.
Is a proclamation amendable?
The proclamations come, the beauty of proclamations is that we can change them. So
Right.
we can strike that, and we'll sign it as amended.
Right.
I don't have a problem with that, and I hear the concern, and I don't want to get into the business of, I don't want to get bogged down in.
I don't either. That's why I was just, that doesn't
So let's
have a place
do
in
it.
proclamation.
All right, so can we have a
So strike
motion
the
to?
date,
Yeah,
right?
yeah, can we have a motion to approve the
You need the period.
7F
After needs to increase, period.
with that?
Yes,
amended?
removing the second whereas, I make a motion that we amend the proclamation to say that, removing the second whereas paragraph.
I would suggest we don't even have to remove the entire whereas, just put a period after, in the third sentence, funding for public transportation infrastructure needs to increase, period. And get rid of the last clause, and Congress needs to pass a long-term multimodal transportation bill by May 31st. Do you think that would work, Rita?
That would work. We say the
Okay.
first part of that whereas later in the proclamation, but it's fine. I'm okay with that. So we've just amended the motion.
Okay.
But there's
to
nothing
just-
wrong with asking Congress needs to pass a long-term multimodal transportation bill. We
Just get rid of the date.
Get rid of the
Get rid of
date,
the date,
but
yes,
I think we should
exactly.
leave that in there, because
No,
Congress
we
does
haven't
need
had
to do
any
that.
discussion about that. I really think that, we don't know what that means. What that means. What is the bill? It's too much for a
Let's just,
proclamation.
let's amend it
Yeah.
and as
So,
you,
increase then, stop at the increase.
Right.
period.
Okay.
Okay, that's fine.
okay.
Well, I
Motion-
think getting rid of the date is also sufficient as well.
Well,
We are
that's what we
getting rid
just
of the
said,
date,
that
yeah.
just
wanna make
take it
sure
out.
That's
just-
what we're doing, okay.
Okay, motion by trustee Dozell, second by Mayor Pro Tem Williams. All those in favor? Passes unanimous. Okay. Item number 8 is adoption of a town ordinance and resolutions for Superior Metropolitan District Number 1 and Superior McCaslin Interchange Metropolitan District to refinance bonds to affect interest rate savings. Town manager.
Thank you, Mayor. Our town staff's been working with our financial advisor, First Southwest Company, and our bond counsel on opportunities to refund outstanding existing debt. They've identified 3 issuance that is going to result, if the board approves action tonight, in significant savings to the town. The 3 funds that have been identified is the Town of Superior Open Space Fund. Currently outstanding debt in that fund is $4.7 million. The Superior Metropolitan District Number 1, which is our water, sewer, and storm district for the town. We have a current outstanding balance of $23.6 million in that fund, or that district. And then the Superior McCaslin Interchange Metropolitan District, which is used primarily to fund the improvements that we're seeing at the interchange, both the first phase and primarily it was the first phase. And the currently outstanding debt in that district is $3.49 million. Staff issued an RFP in January 2015 to regional and national banks to solicit bids for refunding options of these 3 outstanding bond issues. The bid tabulations were included in your memo. For the Open Space Fund, UMB was selected. For District 1, UMB as well, and then for the Interchange District, Bank of the West were the top bids. If the board decides to proceed with these actions tonight, beginning in 2016, the annual cash savings from these refundings will be significant, as I mentioned. It's estimated that the open space fund will have an annual cash savings of approximately $125,000 or 11%. SMD1 will have approximate savings of $530,000 to $740,000 or 19% annual savings. And then SMID would be $80,000 to $170,000 annual savings or 9%. In addition to these very low interest rates that the town will be able to take advantage of, the current bonds that we have now require that we maintain a debt service reserve until the bonds are paid in full. This would go away with the new debt issuance, resulting in us being able to eliminate $542,000 in debt service reserve for the open space fund, $2.7 million in debt service reserve for SMD1, and $500,000 in debt service reserve for SMID. These current debt service reserves will be applied to and reduce each of the new loan amounts. Projected closings for these, SMD1 and SMID, is in March, this month, March 18th, and then the closing for the open space loan would be in April. Staff's recommending that the board approve each of these actions. And then for SMID, just need to state that the district is currently imposing 15 mills to pay debt service on the 2005 bonds that are being refunded. The 2015 loan will refund all the outstanding 2005 bonds and result in debt service savings. It's expected that the mill levy necessary to pay the debt service on the 2015 loan will not exceed 22 mills. Just needed to state that for the record, bond counsel. Paul Nillis, our finance director, is here to answer any questions, as well as Sally Tasker, who's our bond counsel, and then Jason Simmons, who's with First Southwest, which is our finance advisor.
Okay. Trustee Hanson.
Yep. Anxious to get Paul's comments on
Yeah,
this.
yeah.
And I wanted to really understand how this is different than how we've restructured our debt in the past. And is this any more risky than what we've done in the past? Is it really the same type of deal, just a different tool?
Sure.
And then I think the one risk that you had put down was that if interest rates go down, then we would be in trouble a little bit. But I can't imagine that interest rates would be going down in the next few years. So if you can address that too.
Just forsake those savings, forego those savings, right?
Yes, that's right.
Yeah.
Paul Nellis, town staff. Thank you, Trustee Hanson. To be honest with you, I never thought we'd see this day come. We've been looking at this refunding for probably the last 6 years, and we look at it, and we think that interest rates were ultimately going to be rising over that period of time. So we've been extremely fortunate to be able to capture these historic low interest rates. And then speaking of the last, maybe the third part of your question, as it relates to, one option, yes, is to wait. We can lock in these savings now. We can play a game. We can speculate on what we think interest rates are going to do. That's not my business. I would argue from your fiduciary responsibility, as perhaps not your business. Talking with our financial advisor, Mr. Simmons, before the meeting, we've actually seen, since when we locked rates in to today, we've seen interest rates rise, 30 or 40 basis points, 0.3 or 0.4%. And that may not sound like a lot, but if you apply it to, for example, the outstanding SMD1 debt, our utility debt, that 0.3 or 0.4% adds over $500,000 over the refunding period. Trustee Hanson, you had a question as it relates to risk. Are these risky endeavors? Or?
Yeah, just is it any riskier than what we've done before, where we've, is there any risk to this that, we've done differently before?
No, I would argue not. I mean, typically we will go out and we will, solicit bids, essentially to purchase our debt. In this particular case, we have banks, who are the primarily interested participants, I would argue they are actually looking at this issue, these debt refinancing, from a very positive perspective. If someone were risk averse, they would ask for additional surety. They would ask for a debt service reserve. They wouldn't be comfortable with the revenue stream that you have. Banks aren't asking for any of those particular deals. So, from my perspective, it's not any additional risk for us, and actually the people investing in us are looking at us as a good credit risk.
Trustee Gabouris.
So, Paul, I'm not a math major, but as I'm looking at your numbers here, if we pass these three combined together, looking at annual savings on the conservative side, close to $750,000?
I believe my clunky calculator came up with that same calculation, Trustee Gabouris.
And
Up
off
to-
the top of my head,
Yeah.
and then on the high end could be up to $1 million, maybe.
A little over $1 million. Not maybe. These are definite locked-in numbers. Collectively, minimum of $750,000 a year over these three operations that the manager had identified.
So when you said you didn't, I don't know how you put it, but couldn't wait for this date to come, it's finally here, this is a no-brainer. I mean, the question is, what do we do with that money? Because it's.
We know what.
No, we don't know. We
might
know that-
want to do with.
But I mean, that's I'm already thinking about the discussion ahead. It's like, okay, if these savings come to fruition, then, there's some debts we could repay, there's some capital improvements, perhaps we can, put some, anyway, it's very exciting.
And maybe a less sexy result of this as well is we've been striving for the time I've been here, for the 15 years the manager has been here, to try to get our utility to be financially self-sufficient. This doesn't quite do it, but it almost gets us there. So we're talking about utility self-sufficiency combined with a lower transfer from money from the general fund, so it allows the board a myriad of opportunities of how to spend that money, how to reduce taxes, whatever your desire is.
Did you say sexy? Did you use that word?
Did that slip out? I don't know, how could this be sexy?
These numbers are pretty sexy, actually. I think it's pretty amazing. Wow.
Okay, any other questions? Trustee Pennington.
Compliments on actively managing this, so you were able to discern these opportunities into our council and all that kind of stuff, because it does take an active approach to figure this one out. It appears that some things are already in process if the closing date is so quick. Is that right? If it says closing date for SMD1 and SMID loans is March 18th, what's that? What does that mean, this closing date being March 18th, 2015?
That means effectively, we, the town, and the component units, SMD1, SMID, have been negotiating with the bank and the bank councils, with our council, with our town attorney, and we've gotten to agreements. So essentially, we've
locked it in.
Locked in the rates, locked in the agreements, locked in essentially everything.
Great. Okay. That's what I thought it meant.
It's remarkable. I'm like stunned.
Trustee DeSalle.
I have a question about the costs and expenses. I see UMB, it says costs is incurred for SMD1, and then for Bank of the West, it says not to exceed 10,000, but escrow has a blank. So is that a not to exceed too, or the escrow agreement? Just
the
fees and costs, section 7 on page 4 of the escrow agreement. There's a blank there. Total
And-
fees and costs have been fixed at.
And that's something we need to fill in, but the fees have been locked in, and each deal with the bank is a little bit different. But all the calculations have been factored in, essentially the net present value benefit for all these particular items. So those items will be filled in at closing.
Okay, and the other ones seem very reasonable, so, yeah, okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
Okay, any additional questions? Okay. Any discussion?
Public comment?
Yeah, we want to do public comment. Anyone from the public wish to comment on this? Okay, no public comment. Trustee
I
Srella?
got the first one anyway, I think.
Okay.
The ordinance?
Yeah, I move that we approve Town of Superior Ordinance Number 03, 03, that is, I guess, not 0, Series 2015, an ordinance of the Town of Superior, Colorado, authorizing the execution and delivery of a loan agreement and related documents in order to refinance the town's outstanding open space sales and use tax revenue bonds, Series 2006, to affect interest rate savings.
Motion by trustee Sorelli, second by trustee Hansen. Do we roll call this, or roll call?
Yes.
Or roll call.
Okay, Mizell?
Yes.
Paulson?
Yes.
Gregoris?
Yes.
Hanson?
Yes.
Pennington?
Yes.
Williams?
Yes.
Sorelli?
Yes.
Thank you. Who's next?
Make a motion. Make a motion, Superior Metropolitan District Number 1, Resolution Number SMD Number 1-4, Series 2015. A resolution of the Board of Directors of Superior Metropolitan District Number 1 authorizing the execution and delivery of a loan agreement and related documents in order to refinance the district's outstanding special revenue refunding bonds, Series 2006, to affect interest rate savings.
Motion by trustee Hansen and second by trustee Dozell. Roll call.
Yes, on all of these.
Roll call.
Paulson?
Yes.
Gregoris?
Yes.
Hanson?
Yes.
Pennington?
Yes.
Williams?
Yes.
Sorelli?
Yes.
Mizell?
Yes.
Thank you. Who would like to do number 3?
It's not coming up.
I got it. Yep. I'd like to make a motion, Superior McCaslin Interchange Metropolitan District Resolution Number SMID-2, Series 2015, a resolution of the Board of Directors of Superior McCaslin Interchange Metropolitan District authorizing the execution and delivery of a loan agreement and related documents in order to refinance the district's outstanding general obligation refunding bonds, Series 2005, to affect interest rate savings.
Okay, motion by trustee Hansen and second by trustee Sorelli.
Gregoris?
Yes.
Hanson?
Yes.
Pennington?
Yes.
Williams?
Yes.
Sorelli?
Yes.
Mizell?
Yes.
Paulson?
Yes. Okay, thank you very much.
Thank you, Paul.
Next is item number 9, review of updated concept plans for Superior Town Center civic space parcels 1 and 2.
Thank you, Mayor. In 2014, town staff, our consultants, our advisory committees spent a considerable amount of time gathering community engagement, feedback, and working on recommendations for the 5 civic parcels in the town center. And actually, ProStack provided a recommendation to the board on all 5 parcels on June 30th, 2014. As part of this ongoing process, Design Concepts, the town's consultant, has incorporated additional information that we received from the developer's consultant with regard to the conditional letter of map revision fill application for the creek corridor for parcels 1 and 2. Those have been incorporated tonight, and they're going to present those to the board and gather any feedback that you might have with regard to parcels 1 and 2 in the town center. That, Patrick?
Good evening, Patrick Hammer, town staff. Thank you, town manager. As I think everybody's aware, this has been a long, ongoing process. Started very early or at the end of 2013 and carried throughout most of 2014. We came to the board in June with a comprehensive, what we were calling the comprehensive concept plan for the 5 civic spaces. These were plans that were viewed by both town advisory committees, OSAC, ProStack, at multiple meetings. And really kind of what we wanted to present tonight was next level detail on parcels 1 and 2 and taking into account creek corridor and environmental impacts, and beginning to take into consideration things like grading and some of the topographical things that Ranch Capital was beginning to work on. So tonight we've got just a couple of slides for the board's review. The first slide being, and it's a little bit tricky to see, but we've asked Clint Hickey with ERO to join us tonight to really start to talk about impacts on the creek corridor. And I know there's been a lot of discussion at the committee level and even a little bit at the board on habitat and riparian corridor and types of planting and screening. And this was a good opportunity as we go through this process to really start to address some of those items. And if the board has questions specific to the creek corridor, we can address those tonight, and then have Shannon and Bill available to actually address the concept plans on parcels 1 and 2. And then Lisa is also prepared to do the 3D modeling, which we think we're at that point might be helpful just to get an orientation of the parks in relation to the rest of the town center.
She's got it available for
We do
tonight?
have it up tonight, and she's available tonight.
She read my mind.
So if the board would like, we could start with this slide, which just kind of shows the environmental impacts on the creek. We could look at it in conjunction. We're really here just to kind of answer questions as you guys see.
The next slide is actually better. Yeah.
Sure.
So just to frame tonight's discussion and kind of what you'd like out of this, the next steps are having a plan submitted to us for approval. So we're trying to get to, we're trying to fine tune it as much as we can so that when that proposal comes in, it's as close to our liking as possible.
The next step is a final development plan, which then will have the typical public process review with the committees, the planning commission, and the town board. And then, depending if that plan were approved, then it could go to construction documents.
Okay, thank you. Okay. Trustee Pennington.
So before we even start looking at this, do these reflect all federal and state, local, whatever requirements for Coal Creek? Are they on these exhibits?
Yes, that is reflected here in the design, and we've brought Clint here tonight to answer those very questions.
Okay,
if,
good.
If we've got
yeah, because I
detail.
want to know how that's affected what we've seen in the past. And then the other thing is, were these supplied for the Wednesday OSAC meeting? They've been looking for additional graphics on the Coal Creek corridor for half a year now.
These will be included in the OSAC along with information from the CLOM RF, which goes into greater level of
For
detail.
Wednesday's meeting?
For Wednesday's
Okay.
meeting, that is correct.
Okay. Do you want to go ahead with?
Sure.
Yeah.
I think maybe the best place to start then is probably to have Bill, if you wouldn't mind coming up, and we'll just kind of walk you through some of the changes from the plan as was presented back in June.
I just want to make sure we're clear that the creek corridor there, that all that blue is not water. That's something other than that.
Correct. Actually,
yeah. Thank you with the RO. Yeah, so the blue area is basically the Coal Creek riparian corridor, which the U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service determined to be Preble's meadow jumping mouse habitat. So what we did was we basically kind of classified the habitat in terms of high quality habitat versus kind of moderate quality habitat. Yeah. So habitat that contained wetlands and shrub components that the Preble's meadow jumping mouse depends on was kind of identified in this area. This was done before the 2013 flood, so the habitat has changed somewhat, and we're going to be revisiting this in the field when it comes time to actually plant shrubs for mitigation for the Preble's meadow jumping mouse. So yeah, this blue area is basically riparian habitat that was kind of determined to be marginally suitable for the Preble's meadow jumping mouse. And we walked this with the Fish and Wildlife Service and kind of determined
So do the boundaries still remain true of the blue?
Yeah, they do.
Or will they change?
A lot of the blue was basically the tree, the riparian, the overstory. I know that a lot of, I believe some of the trees didn't make it through the flood. So, but it's still would be classified as moderate quality habitat. Yeah, there's enough of the riparian corridor intact.
So can I ask a couple questions on the buffer on both sides? So what is the widest buffer from the creek bed edge, and what is the narrowest buffer throughout? Here, I'm going to try and, why is that not, for God's sakes, it was working a second ago.
Are you in reference to this general area?
Huh. How weird. Huh? It was working. Well, anyway, go ahead. Thank you.
There we go. It's a little bit difficult to see, and hopefully
Okay.
visible in your packet. But we've kind of measured a point here from edge of field to creek at 55 plus feet, which we determined was going to be one of the closest points. And then at 65 plus feet in this area here. And this is an existing trail on this side. So 50, 55, 60 to 65 here.
Is that 55 and 65 to the center of the creek or to the edge of the creek?
Center.
To the center of the creek.
Is
Okay.
what we.
On one side, on just one side.
On the enhancement side, correct.
Okay, what about the other side?
That's wider.
Yeah, we did not on this drawing go to the existing trail that's out there now. That's something that we could follow up if we need to.
Okay, so we know these figures here on this side.
Correct.
But we don't know to the north.
We did not.
Okay.
That's something that we can measure
Great.
fairly easily. Yep.
Perfect. And you think, hold on, that 50 is right here? Is this the 50? Or the 50, where's the, right
We
there?
went from 50 to the nearest,
That's
nearest
the
spot
50.
to the field, correct.
Okay. And do we know what this is here? Is that about 50 as well?
Again, that's not a point that we measured. We were focusing on kind of the park parcels, but we can do that fairly easily with the help of design concepts or even potentially in-house.
And I'm assuming this blue is this mapped, it says mapped habitat, moderate quality. Are we going with any kind of guidelines from, I don't know, whether it's what federal entity or?
Yeah, so, yeah, I mean, I guess what I can do, this will kind of answer Sandy's question too. So we received a Section 404 permit from the U.S. Army Corps of Engineers and that's basically for these trail crossings, the bridge crossing here, and these two trail crossings, the bridge and then the utility crossing, that triggered Section 404. So we had to get a permit from the U.S. Army Corps of Engineers. In the meantime, the U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service determined this to be kind of moderate quality Preble's habitat because of known populations that are upstream, right on the edge of town. So that triggered Section 7 consultation. So because there was a federal Army Corps permit, we had to consult. The Army had to consult with the U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service.
Okay.
And we were the consultant that prepared the biological assessment and the 404 permit application.
So does that mean there's certain guidelines on how to repair the habitat in the area, or as well as buffers and what you plant, what you don't plant, how you maintain it?
Yeah, there's nothing that's, yeah, I mean, I basically, I don't know that there's any strict outline guidelines, but the U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service wanted mitigation for shrubs that were going to be impacted along the edge of the creek. So basically, the guidelines that it was kind of a coordination back and forth with the Fish and Wildlife Service we proposed enhancement measures by planting native shrubs in areas that were kind of devoid of shrubs. So basically, Yeah, it's the U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service's mitigation guidelines. They wanted habitat enhancement along the creek. And so basically, that was, what they did is they published their biological opinion of the project, and then that was submitted to the U.S. Army Corps of Engineers. And the Army Corps, the Section 404 permit states that these areas must be enhanced per the U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service request.
And that was based on the trails that cross it,
Yeah,
correct?
the trail and the bridge.
Okay.
Yeah, the two trail crossings, the bridge, and then.
It has nothing to do with the fields butting up against it.
Correct.
Is that correct?
That
Okay.
is correct, yeah.
And if I can, from a design standpoint, if I can kind of take you back to June, we showed a lot of graphics and images of actually kind of intersecting trails in here and some what we were calling outdoor education opportunities, and that was deemed not appropriate for this use. So on previous versions of this, we had the crisscross of trails in here and areas where kids could go down to the creek potentially, and those were elements that had to come out once we had a full understanding of the process that Clint was speaking of. And then there's also going to be, as Clint was saying, an opportunity through this process to actually enhance some of the areas in the creek corridor that have been damaged just due to the flood, or areas that weren't kind of thriving naturally. But from a design standpoint, a lot of what we were looking at in terms of the outdoor education came out to kind of protect that area.
And is this a project for the habitat enhancement for urban drainage?
That's upstream.
So they have no jurisdiction in this particular area whatsoever?
I don't know that, I know that as far as I know, this is being constructed per the urban drainage standards, but urban drainage is not a part of this project. They are a part of an upstream project.
Well, I understand that.
Okay.
I understand that. Is there any way to utilize any of their funds to do part of this project in any way, shape, or form?
Yeah, I think as we go through the process, it would be something that staff would definitely look into. I just don't know that we're quite that far down the pike in terms of funding and things along those lines. Yes, Andy?
So getting back to that June meeting, I missed in the cover memo, I don't think it's stated, I know the board at that time, when we reviewed design concepts plans, and maybe Shannon, when you come up, you can identify these. We had certain things we liked and didn't like. I see the playgrounds missing along the, but I also see that the bathroom facilities have moved way over here. So maybe it's good for Shannon to come back and remind us of the conversation back then.
Bill Gott, Health Design Concepts. Yeah, two things that I think would help. Just to flip back for a minute, I think this will clarify what we were just talking about, but this is the mitigation plan that Clint's firm agreed to with the Fish and Wildlife Service, and this represents the minimum mitigation requirements. So all of the little dots in these areas represent specific numbers and species of native shrubs that need to be replaced in those or very close to those areas. So following these outlines, and these hatched areas are areas that they acknowledged as part of the town center development would be disturbed, and so this mitigation is to offset that. So you can see those the colors shifted just so they don't conflict as much with the plan and you can read it more clearly. But looking at those, the sort of minimum mitigation requirements, what we're trying to do is to tie into that, and we're developing not quite as far as the anticipated disturbed boundary up here that was agreed to, but we're also trying to tie into the enhancements on the side of the development, so that our improvements over here plus the improvements in the area agreed to would add up to a continuous buffer, kind of a natural buffer as a backdrop to the field.
Do you mind standing by the mic, just so we get all this?
Sure,
and
sorry.
Use the pointer things.
Yeah. So tying these together would result in a continuous buffer along the north side of the field, and likewise on parcel 1, on the side of the park bordering the natural area, we're proposing, or we're recommending, water quality features that would help take any runoff from the developed field areas, from the parking and so forth, intercept those and clean those before they entered the natural area, and would also serve as a natural backdrop to sort of buffer between the more developed park areas and the natural creek corridor. I know a lot of you have seen these plans multiple times already. I'll try to walk you through, since we've received more information than we had when we presented the earlier plans, what some of the changes are. The good news is that most of it stayed the same, and the assumptions that we sort of had to make with less information have mostly worked out. This area remains a nice bowl-shaped, more informal field area, but the basic dimensions that we were hoping to achieve there have panned out. We shortened the parking here a little bit to better accommodate the bridge, the proposed bridge, and tying that into Marshall Road in a safe and effective way for the traffic. But overall, Park 1 stayed much the same as you've seen it previously. Still have the paved pathway tying together Park 1 and Park 2, since Park 2 doesn't have any street frontage, relying on the parking in Park 1 on a good pedestrian connection to take you through the pedestrian underpass and over to Park 2 to tie these two parks together. We did hear your comments about this up here, roughly this location was where we had been showing a playground in the previous iteration. I think this gets us to that large field size with less impact to now what we know are those hard and fast boundaries to the natural area. And we're proposing that this location would be more appropriate for the playground. I think some advantages are it's closer to the main park entrance. It's potentially, this dashed line here is the currently mapped floodway. And that current floodway mapping is before the last flood, but it's also before this bridge and underpass are put in place, which is going to channelize a portion of the river. And we think it's very likely that this boundary, when it's remapped, is going to shift northward. So there's a good chance that the playground in this location could be, a lot of it could be outside of the floodway, which would be a big advantage. We can make it work whether it's in or outside the floodway, but there would be more flexibility if it's outside the floodway.
The bathroom was moved, though, because it was in the floodplain. You can't have a restroom in the floodplain, right?
So, exactly. So there's nowhere. So this is residential along here, and the park starts down here. One thing we didn't know, we knew that there would be a grade change between the residential development and the plateau where the field is going. We didn't really know how much. We were sort of trying to speculate. It turns out that it's about 10 feet in this location, so that all of this area that's outside the current mapped floodway is on a slope. I mean, so there's virtually no place to put a structure in Park 2 that would serve as a restroom. The thought is that there is, I think, one commercial building up here, and if there were an agreement with the developer that the lower level of that could serve as a public restroom facility, that might serve the use of Park 2. But we haven't found a viable location on the parcel itself. One other outcome of this grade change is that now we're looking at this connection between the promenade and the park a little bit differently. So if you look closely, so standing right up here overlooking the field, you're about 10 foot above the field, and we thought that would be a nice sort of overlook location. Clearly you need some stairs and ramps to get people down to that 10-foot, down that 10-foot elevation change without cutting too much into the park space. So, so we're proposing in this iteration, it splits into 2 stairways that take you off to the left or the right, depending on which direction you want to go in, and sort of makes a little bit of a monumental statement. I think a big set of stairs in this type of location can be sort of a gathering place, sort of a meeting place, as well as just a means of getting from A to B. And I think this type of thing would serve that location. So we're proposing terracing between here and the field level with 2 terraces. The top level planted, a ramp going down this way and down this way, each of which meet the requirements for accessibility, but I don't think they would necessarily be perceived as accessible ramps. They serve as good paths that anybody would use. And down at the bottom terrace, where we would have probably a low seat wall or a series of benches, sort of a great place to have this planted backdrop to your back and be able to just sit and look out at the field. So there's sort of multiple levels of activity that spill out onto the field and back up to the town center.
So while we're on that, one of the comments we made back in June of 2014 was a lack of seating. So it appears we've got a nice, large, playable field there, but where do you put the spectators? So you've addressed some of that with the lower terrace. How many people would that roughly accommodate?
2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12. Something like 25 to 30 benches down here, each of which could sit probably 5 people. So lots of seating on the south side. Not so much opportunity for seating on the north side, except that the field is so big that I think there's a pretty good likelihood it wouldn't be striped all the way out to the edge at most times, and there would be an opportunity for informal seating on the grass all around it. And I think probably quite a bit, especially if kids were playing. It might be a series of smaller fields going north-south. You could have multiple events going on at the same time.
So what, if we don't plant the upper terrace, can that be reasonably made into additional, some creative seating opportunity?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, there's a possibility there. I think there's also probably be nice to maintain some buffer between sort of the back fences of these yards and the seating, so maybe down closer to, I don't know, the ramp level. You could have a couple of levels of seating or something like that and still have a buffer behind you.
And can you take the seating up this way, up in here too, or no?
Sure.
So you take it the whole
sure.
length of the
We
field.
could extend it, yeah.
Right now, you're looking at 75 people more or less, right? 5 times 25, or no?
It's 125.
Yeah, 100, 125, 150 on individual benches that we're showing now. I mean, if you made it a seat wall that was just continuous, you could fit more people. So there would be ways.
Why are you speaking in terms of benches? I don't want to bias. I want to hear why you're speaking in benches, and there are other alternatives to benches.
Right.
Which, again, is this image that comes from the Laguna Beach area, where they actually just make broad, rock-faced, flat grassy, rock-faced down to where people can throw picnic blankets or bring their lawn chairs, of course.
Yeah, I think that's definitely a possibility. I mean, benches would be on the more formal side, but there's, that's a discussion that I think has yet to occur. How formal should it be, or should it be more natural? And you could have terraced stones that make up multiple levels of seating and steps.
Right.
That'd be another way to do
What's
it.
the width of that there?
So
right here.
Yeah, so the ramp is 6 feet wide, so there's about 6 feet of planting below the ramp on the field side, and probably, it tapers, but 8, 10 feet of planted buffer between the ramp and these properties.
Are you familiar with Pleasant View Field up in Boulder?
Give me a
Where the big
landmark.
soccer fields are? And
Yeah, north?
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. So they have a bowl there that's, it's just a slope, grass slope,
Mhm.
and that's where a lot of spectators will sit and watch various games. I mean, is that similar size, or could it be something like that? Or you would prefer to have some type of structured seating there, whether it's rock or?
Well, I think to make up this 10 feet without sloping it so that it would cut more into the sort of the field real estate, and we wouldn't have to push the field boundary north. I think we need a little bit of wall to help that, to help just the efficiency of that. But I definitely think there's an opportunity to make more of a grass slope, maybe especially at this end. There's no saying that we have to have ramps on both sides. I think it's kind of nice from a circulation standpoint if you're coming up this way and you can just take the ramp up that way, versus if you're coming this way, you can just take the ramp up that way. But we don't have to have two ramps. One of them could be a natural slope.
If we have a big community event there, that field is hopefully going to be multi-purpose, and maybe we have a big outdoor concert or a gathering of some kind. How do 2,000 or 3,000 or 4,000 people converge on that spot without congestion?
Well, so there's a lot of questions. I think first we would definitely want to use more of this slope for terracing and seating opportunities, and probably less of it for planting and less of it for formal ramps and things like that. And I guess the other question is access. Maybe instead of splitting it into two stairs, we want one wide one or something like that to accommodate,
A crowd?
A big crowd moving down there all at once. There's a couple ways. I mean, this is the main way for pedestrians to get in. There's also kind of a back route over here. But maybe we want to look at widening those, because those are really the only two ways, other than coming in from Park 1 over the
Right.
bridge and the paths.
Well, I just want to keep
But-
alive the idea that this is not just going to be, two teams playing sports
Yeah.
at one time, that if we do this correctly, hopefully it becomes another central gathering place for the community. And then another question is, along that long face of that playing field that faces Coal Creek, what keeps balls and players out of that riparian habitat?
Fairly dense native shrubs and cottonwood canopy. We haven't proposed any kind of a physical barrier like a fence. I guess that's a consideration. I think it would be nicer to keep it natural and let the vegetation do that work. Of course, then, I mean, if you kick a ball into the bushes, it's you're gonna have to go dig for it. So.
I think it's a real concern.
Yeah.
And the question is, should we bring that north edge so close? Because, as I understand, some of the programming interest even comes with adults playing on that field. And if you've got the poor little Preble's mouse in there, are you supposed to have human traffic in there trying to retrieve a ball?
No, not so much. I mean, that's really why we're trying to augment this buffer up here. And I guess, so that comes back to why is it such a big field? And so the comments that we got over and over again throughout the public process was that people wanted a big field, like full-size soccer field, the biggest rugby field. And so we tried our best to accommodate that size field.
What happens if we violate those Preble's mouse requirements? We've waited
Right.
a year or two for these recommendations, these requirements to come in. What happens if we violate them by having foot traffic in there?
Does foot traffic violate them? I think we're meeting the requirements by doing the mitigation, and we're actually going above and beyond the required mitigation.
I don't think there would be any I don't think foot traffic would constitute as a violation.
Okay. Well, I just was going, apparently we can't allow the children to go down there in the outdoor areas. But if they're now coming in with their cleats on,
Well, it sounded like you can't design usage in that area, but if people go into that area for
well, what
reason.
I don't want to see, from my personal standpoint of what this creek corridor could be, and that's why I recommended in my public comments, looking at the different views of Boulder Creek augmentation, and on a nice sunny day, go walk it. Let's build it in to work, so we don't end up with chain link fence there to keep the balls out, because that would be the worst possible solution as far as I'm concerned. So let's construct it in a manner, and if that means an upward sort of ridge, I don't know. Like, let's do it right from the get-go so we don't have some unacceptable solution later on down the road.
Agreed, yeah. I think a healthy stand of vegetation, as healthy and dense as we can get it through here, would be a great way to accomplish that.
Okay, Trustee Hanson, then Dozen.
Future roadway here, is it, and I understand that there's going to be a parking structure down here, so I think the goal would be to have most people parking in the structure so they're in the town square and then coming this way. And then when they leave, they go back to the town square. But that could be a problem carrying if you've got gear that you want to take down to the field. Is it possible that there'd be pullouts here so that people could drop stuff off and then go around and park in the structure from there?
Yeah, so, I mean, I would hope that this would be a pullout here. I mean, we're looking at this as really the only service entrance, but that would be certainly restricted to authorized vehicles. I don't know that I have a great answer for you beyond that, other than, I don't know, I feel like this piece down here is sort of not in our hands, maybe in the developer's hands and in your hands, but.
It would be nice if you have a van load of soccer kids, 8 years old, that you could stop there, drop them off while you go park the car, and then they could get down to the field.
Yeah, and I totally agree, and that's something we've struggled with throughout this, and up until this iteration, we actually had just a little pull-off turnaround in here, which now that we have additional information on how this bridge works is completely not feasible because of this. You're already gaining enough elevation to go over this bridge here that you're so far above the park. There's no way to make that happen. And that's how the playground ended up occupying that piece of real estate. So I just don't have a better answer.
You bring up a good point, Chris, though. I mean, it would be convenient.
And then last question on parcel number 1. So earlier in our meeting, we had a discussion about Founders Park, and there's a T-ball, skin T-ball field. At one point, we tried to fit a full-size Little League baseball field in here, and we felt that I guess it wouldn't work. But can we fit a T-ball size field, a similar skin field like we have at Founders Park, maybe a little bit bigger, somewhere in this area here?
You know, I'd need to know what their sort of minimal requirements would be, because we did look at softball and a little league size field on this parcel, and it was awkward at best. But if they could work with significantly shorter outfield than that, like I think the diamond is
the outfield at Kupfer Field is 190 feet. So somewhere around 190 to 210, if you could get it that far up. But, you know, most of that's going to be grass anyway, so that could be used as an open park. But we're really more concerned about the infield, and can you make that where it's maybe U12, U10 size Little League field?
Yeah, so just for reference, I mean, this might be a little tough to envision, but so there's 0 and there's 200 feet.
Oh.
So taking a segment that long, I mean, it's tough before you start running into, these are...
Well, I'm thinking at this corner here, like baseball diamond here, big outfield out here.
Yeah, so I mean just sort of eyeballing it, I don't know, 200 feet from there to there, I don't think we quite make it. It might be, that's why I'm saying if their absolute minimum, if they could, if 170 or 180 maybe works,
Yeah.
it's tight. It's really tight.
Yeah. Well, it's something to consider, because I know there's some requests for that, and if that's, if we find that in the future that Founders Park is definitely going to be non-programmable, this test doesn't work.
Yeah.
That it would be nice if we had somewhere else that we could program. And if this is the spot, if it doesn't have to be big, maybe it is just T-ball, then maybe that works.
T-ball might work, yeah.
So something to think about.
Okay, Trustee Dizza.
The loss of a restroom facilities over by this very large field that we're now talking about, hundreds, if not thousands of people will attend. Thousands, you always put in porta potties. But there's got to be a place to put in you got to find a place for a bathroom, because walking way up over to the other side of parcel 1 doesn't seem like a very viable alternative at all.
Rita, can I ask the question, if that flood line goes north, could we forego the playground on Field 2, the purple little appendage there, and put a bathroom area?
You can't put the bathroom, they said, on the
But if it
north
moves,
side of the line.
He said it may move upward,
Yeah,
right?
But what about on the south side of the line, though, on this edge of the playground? Couldn't there be a bathroom there? I mean, that's just a comment. I don't know. I don't need to solve it now, but there's got to be a bathroom
So
there.
like right here, Rita?
Yeah, we're on this side, this half of the purple.
Why
You know,
not one right here?
Well, no, that's where I think the pullout should be.
That's in the floodplain.
I think that's where the pullout should be.
No, wait a
To
minute.
drop people off, because, and then you
Floodplain's
could
right
go.
here.
What?
Here.
No.
See the black dotted line?
That's all floodplain.
Yeah, okay, fine.
But the possibility might be a drop-off, Chris, up there where we were just pointing to, and pull in there instead of, those, and then walk under the bridge, under McCaslin to get over to the field.
Rita, are you saying 2 restrooms then? One in the existing where they have it, and a second one by the purple playground?
Well, I would say yes. If you've got a bunch of little kids playing at Park 1, you want to have a park restroom close. And if you have teams of people with family members,
You've got to have.
you've got to have a bathroom.
I agree, you have to have one up there.
You've got to have a bathroom. And to rely on the potential tavern that might get built there, along there, from the developer and using them, creating public restrooms underneath, I wouldn't rely on that very long.
But weren't we talking about, so this is going to be commercial here, right?
Not necessarily.
I thought at some point we were talking, maybe the developer could put in a bathroom, a public bathroom in here.
Well, yeah, no, but I'm saying why, I don't think we should rely on that, to rely on
We
a
can insist on
private-
it.
That's something I think we perhaps could insist on. And I
Right.
agree. I think you've got to have some kind of restroom
You've got to
facility in
got
that
to have a
area.
restroom.
And I think they would want some kind of restroom in that facility, the developer
Right.
wants some kind of
Right, you
restroom.
wouldn't want-
You
if
just
I-
don't want to set up a situation where
A
people are going to
private
be
business.
running into private businesses.
Right.
That's just a disaster.
Right.
And just as a follow-up point, the restroom that was originally shown down in here, after reviewing the, kind of the Clomar application F, was determined that did need to come out. That
Okay.
having a restroom that close in this area, next to the creek in
But
the.
follow that idea towards the street now.
Closer
How about
to the
closer
street,
to, like-
yeah, on this side, on the south side.
there.
No,
Sure.
right there, right in there, right in that area in there. You can't have a pull-out there anymore, but set a restroom there.
Sure.
And then the pull-out is a possibility, perhaps, on the other side. No, on this side, yes, on this side of Marshall, right in that area in there. Because then you could get under the bridge and go across to the field. Isn't that where the bridge is, under Marshall? Right there? Yes. So a pull-out drop-off might work
Lisa's
there, I
saying
don't know.
it's not possible.
Correct.
Well, I don't know, I agree with Chris, you gotta have a place to drop things off.
Yeah, I would hate to do a pull-out drop-off there, because if you've got some gear, baby carriage, or I don't know, whatever, then you've got to walk up here and then down here. So I think you're better off trying to work out something up here. So you're closer to the field instead of having to go on the trail.
Yeah, I agree with that too, but I don't know if we're going to be able to get the developer to agree to that. So if all else fails, we got to get as close as possible. And we really need, there's no place to stop the car. I'm telling you, if we have problems with people picking up kids after school. Yeah, what do you think we're going to have here?
Yep. And we agree that the issue with the site here is the grade and not being able to, this is a fairly significant kind of slope coming down.
Well, we're
into
not
here.
trying to solve the problem. It was just kind of a throw out
Sure.
up against the wall. But you gotta, I think, I agree with Chris, have to find a place where you can drop people off, and you have to put a restroom on that side.
So can this be utilized here for anything?
That's actually the CDOT 36 bikeway. So this is outside, and I should clarify that this piece of the development is not by the developer or Superior. This is CDOT's trail up here.
So we can note, these things are being noted for the developer to address in his FDP, right?
So the biggies are restroom solution and drop-off
Drop
solution.
off, yeah, closer, because there's no parking, and there's no parking either. There's no parking.
My take on the seating, though, is, for as many of these fields as I've been to, the bring a lawn chair method seems to be very popular.
Right, as long as you've got a flat place to sit a lawn chair.
Right.
Well, people just put it around the fields, and that seems to suffice in most cases. And I wouldn't want to see us get into a huge amount of development of seating.
No.
Because every use there is going to be different, and you put seating way over on one side, it's not going to be useful for something going on the other side.
To me,
And
the terrace thing is beautiful, though, because it actually
so.
creates an amphitheater-esque feel to watch the activity below.
Yes.
We had wanted an amphitheater somewhere in here to have some flexibility. So that's the appeal from me when I heard you say terraced.
Okay. Mayor Pro Tem Williams.
Okay, so I'm probably going to reiterate a couple things, but I'm doing it on purpose. First of all, I'm a little concerned. It's predominantly fields, though I'm okay if we not over-program this. And the reason why I say that is because if you live here in this development and it's always programmed, then you're never using it. So I want us to be cognizant of the people that actually end up living there. So that's just my comments there. The other thing is, because this is a promenade, it's a walking promenade, and we did that on purpose, it's supposed to lead you to something exciting, hopefully, whether it's a game or whether it's a concert. And so the idea of having some sort of community event here doesn't make sense to me. You're taking everybody away from all the activity here, which is where we planned it all for the little town square and our promenade, and you're bringing them over here. Now, it's just not a natural progression to me for having and keeping your residents and all your community activity and visitors in this town square. So I just want to make sure that when we talk about this informal event seating on grass slope over here, that, and this is where I'm reiterating, that we have the opportunity to do the same thing here, so that this becomes a concert or the 4th of July event or whatever event it is, and that we have that flexibility should we find that this is really not as convenient as we had planned, and that this is better. So I do like the idea of the terracing, building that in. I was in San Diego, And on the beach there, they had the exact same kind of terracing, and it actually wasn't done quite as well in my mind. It was mostly concrete that you would sit on these, and there wasn't as much, flower beds and whatnot to make it more beautiful. So I hope that we could do something like that. The fact of having it just uninterrupted seating instead of just benches, I like that better. So what Trustee Pennington was mentioning, the terracing, all in one shot, forget the benches. The other thing, we had talked about sort of out-of-the-box amenities that we were at some point looking at for both of these parcels. And this is pretty bare. Again, I said it's predominantly fields, and I don't see, picnic benches or grills, anywhere to have a picnic and grill out, or any other kind of amenities. We looked at a number of different amenities such as a gazebo, fitness stations, maybe a more formal band shell, grills, benches with shelter overhangs, I don't even know half of it, and public art and whatever else. But I'm just wondering, where is that creativity there? And I realize we're utilizing pretty much every square inch of this for fields, or CDOT or something, floodplain, this, that, and the other. An explanation for every little square inch. But I'm hoping that we can incorporate some of these out-of-the-box features, even if they're just really small. Something that just gives it some uniqueness compared to Purple Park, which is beautiful, but maybe an amenity that is more interesting. Wait a minute. I just want to make sure I've got this. And then the lighting. There was one thing on the lighting. You have one area here that you're mentioning for lighting. Is that the only area that we would have lighting, and it would obviously be facing that way?
So the field lighting on a field this size would typically consist of 6 poles. So one here, a mirror on the other side, one on the center, and in this lower terrace, and then the west end and on the opposite side as well.
Is there any way to light the field coming from here, moving out that way, but not doing it here, moving this way?
I think you can have directional light, though, that you could have it around the field, that it'll stay on the field and not light pollute the residents up there. I mean, guys, Patrick could probably address that better, but I'm pretty sure that light technology these days, you can really direct it to where you want it.
But also, if you're living here, nothing's happening here, but the lights are on, just shining just this section. It might be kind of irritating. I don't know.
Shouldn't be on if nothing's happening.
Well, and
we also have to be cognizant of the hotel that's going to be
Right.
up there, and hotel customers don't want lights in their windows. So the
Correct.
lighting, I'm glad you brought that up.
Yep.
Have you ever been to Las Vegas?
Well, they're not coming to
Thank
Vegas.
God I don't live there.
Yeah.
Blackout curtains. But I don't think, has that been decided that for sure we're going to have lighting? No, that's still, I'm seeing it shake side to side of heads. Because I think I remember that the developer wasn't necessarily in favor of lights, particularly given the residential units they're going to have along the south side of that field.
If you, again, kind of going back to June 30th, we actually had a slide at the end with some up-in-the-air questions, one of them being lighting, and then the type of surfacing here. It's our understanding from the developer that he is interested in lights on those fields, but I don't know that for certain. That's just comments that we've heard kind of during the planning process.
And actually, I'm sorry, but that is not what I heard. I heard him every turn when we discuss this, he discussed lighting. He envisioned lighting there. I never heard him say no.
I remember, but I wasn't here, I was back there,
Yeah.
saying that he wasn't really excited about, it was up to us to decide, but he wasn't excited about having lights there on the field. If it was his preference, he wouldn't have it. But I don't think he was opposed. He just didn't. But, the question is, what are you going to use the field for? And that size of a field that's on the east side of Marshall Road, of Parcel 2, can't fit anywhere else. It can't fit in Parcel 1. So you're kind of stuck that you got a flat field there. And that's what you got. If that's where we're going for, there's nothing else you can do, except you got to have a bathroom.
And I want to reiterate, I'm opposed to anything but a grass field there. I'm not interested in anything synthetic on that piece of land.
And I echo that as well. That was something I was going to mention, but it.
I wouldn't discount some of the hybrid stuff that's out there that they don't, the hybrid that has the AstroTurf and the natural turf mixed together, it doesn't have the crumb rubber in it. It's not, it's not part of that.
We don't want that.
Yeah, but it gives you.
I'm
it's a lot more
opposed
durable.
unless convinced otherwise, and I've not been convinced
I think when
thus
that
far.
conversation comes and we have somebody that
An
is
expert.
expert in that, yeah, and do a presentation. But so I like the terracing thing for the seating, and I want to know more about what do you mean by terracing? Is it 2 levels of seating that maybe it's 2 long rock benches or whatever, or 2 levels of grass seating, or what is terrace seating?
Well, I mean, following this conversation, not what's shown there, I mean, I would envision something like sandstone steps with kind of a rough edge and creating almost, a constructed but natural-looking series of steps up with terracing, something like that.
So rows, so you could sit 3 rows of people across 400 feet or whatever.
But maybe interrupt it with pockets so that
Flower
it's a
beds?
little bit, with pockets of plantings here and there so that it's not just solid, either stone or concrete terracing, but has some natural component blended into it as well, but maximizes the
Natural-looking
seating more
tables
than
or
this
something.
solution does and gets you up to multiple tiers.
Yeah.
That's sort of what I'm thinking now.
I'm going
after-
to that
after our
area
current
this weekend. I will get some pictures, but
San Diego?
they're about 10 or 12 feet wide or more. I mean, they're substantial. Grass surface, boulder edge, and multiple rows can fit in there, or picnic blankets thrown or whatever. So I thought I heard you say 2 terraces is what was possible.
Well, no, that's what we've shown is 2 terraces,
Right.
but.
Right. I'm
based on-
not seeing little 6 foot, 6 foot, 6 foot, 6 foot as like Red Rocks, except solid. But the point is, I love however it is executed, I love the idea of using that elevation change productively.
And actually, now that I think about it, when I walked all the way up to the beach, it's near, I think it was Pacific Beach, it's up farther north, before you get to La Jolla. That's where all this terracing with, flower beds in between, and I remember sitting there and stuff, so I might even have pictures, so.
Yeah, we'd be interested in seeing those. And another one to look at would be at the south rim of the Grand Canyon. That there's an amphitheater that was constructed there in the last 3 years with that same kind of step seat terrace thing that you can walk up. You can sit on the steps. It's varied. It's not straight or rigid in any way, and it overlooks the Grand Canyon, and it just provides just a great overlook feature. So we can work with you on that.
Okay, any other questions, comments?
The last question, I guess, is I'm not clear how close would a parking garage be, public parking garage? And that I don't expect an answer right now, but just put that into the discussion, is how close would the public parking garage be?
I can answer that. It's right behind the town square.
Well,
Couple blocks.
I had just
On
heard
this
Randy
side of
say
it.
that.
Well, but no, we want that documented somewhere, I
Okay,
think.
right.
I'm asking that question, not for the answer tonight, but a documentation. Where is the public parking garage?
Two things I want to throw out there that are vestiges of the old conversation. One, I thought we had all agreed that this entrance plaza with wetlands overlook in the pink coral part of Park 1 bit the dust. I thought we said nobody's really going to want to look into a glorified water
Swamp.
retention pond. So I thought that bit the dust. Why is that still on this plan?
After getting more information from the developer and the engineers, it's actually doable to make that a nice-looking water feature similar to what we would have at other town facilities. And then in knowing that we needed to move the restroom and needing some kind of focal point, there was a design, again, a concept that if it were a nicer-looking aquatics feature and a place to have an overlook and a restroom, that might make sense.
It would be more than a restroom.
Correct.
Okay. Okay, I look forward to seeing how that might play out. Then the other thing that was very important early on was the way in which the underpass under the bridge that connect Park 1 and Park 2, how it looked. Carl Worthington in our original design process, it was going to be done to very naturally fit into the landscape. It was going to have high enough clearance that it didn't feel like a little tunnel. So I hope when the FDP comes forward, they remember all that and make it a nice architectural feature and not just a functional feature. Then, if I can play off of what Deborah was saying, how traffic flows if I'm coming down the promenade and I want to get over to Park 1, how do I do it? Can you use the little light thing to show me how I'd come off the promenade and walk over to Park 1?
Use the trail system west side of the park, cross the creek and cut under.
So you'd cross it, then come back?
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
There's not sidewalk on that one road that connects to Marshall? And along Marshall, there's not sidewalk there?
There is.
So you could.
On both sides?
Yeah, you could.
Do maybe a cross point here and come down. Using the trail system, you want to come this way, potentially could come here, intersect and go down.
But do you think if you're going to be using that parcel 1, you're going to park in that, or those parking stalls up there, wouldn't you?
It's not very big.
Yeah, it's not very many.
How many stalls is it?
37.
Well, and we've begged the question, never asked it. I really do like Chris's, I want to see that overlay to see if we can put a backstop down on that far corner and accomplish something of baseball type. But is that mostly flat area? Let's say baseball doesn't fit there, but does under 13 soccer fit?
No. If you look at it, you see all the curvatures of the earth there, I mean, the natural landscape, the land.
Right.
And then it's only 165 wide by 300 long, but it's not 165 all along there.
What are the dimensions of the flat area?
I think in previous presentations, we'd shown this as maybe fitting a U12 size soccer field.
That's what I thought. You can fit a younger.
And everything's kind of sloping, down towards this water quality area, and then kind of the banked, which I think was probably some of the original intention when we started to show the place for some kind of stage or maybe a movie screen. It was starting to play off the hillside seating that naturally occurred in that location.
Okay. Everybody feel good about the direction we're giving to move forward?
What
Okay.
happens now then with this?
FDP's next, right?
So we're not sending this back for, I guess,
Yeah.
is ProStack going to do anything
They've already approved everything.
back in June?
Well, they will see the FDP. You
Yeah.
want to go through the steps again?
So if we're moving towards the final development plan for parcels 1 and 2, that would be created, that document, then it'll have staff review, and it'll go back for modifications based on our review. And then once it's ready, then it would go to the advisory committees for their review, whether they need one or multiple meetings for that review, then the planning commission, and then ultimately, once it gets through everybody, to the town board.
And it comes as an FDP? So actually, I would say that I would like to see this concept plan before it's an FDP, with, accommodating some of the changes that we've all discussed.
What changes?
Well, like bathrooms and pull-out area.
Everyone's
and-
contributed something,
Yeah.
unique and interesting
Terracing.
and better than.
I think you're going to get a more productive document if we move to the final development plan because of the detail that's going to be associated with it. And then it can be, it's going to go through the committee, so there's going to be, recommendations based on that, and then it's the plan commission and back to the board. I just think you're going to get more out of it if we take the next step and have those details included.
Actually, the way I'm envisioning this
Uh-huh.
is a little bit different than the way we've been doing it. I don't want it to come as an FDP where we're seeing something different or we're seeing exactly the same. And so then it's hours and hours of discussion of the same thing that we've already talked about, where I would rather see changes that we've discussed tonight be incorporated in a conceptual plan, brought back, we all really feel good about it. It goes into an FDP, then there's very little discussion at that point. So I'm looking for the FDP to have no surprises, no long discussions. Mostly we're excited and happy about it. I don't want to just sit there and how we've done before where it's hours, many meetings, and we're still negotiating to get something, that we all feel good about.
Kendra, you have something to say?
I just want to throw out that the FDP is a quasi-judicial process. And so technically, we're not supposed to have our minds made up, and we're not supposed to have everything all resolved, and it's supposed to all occur at that meeting. And I know what we're doing here today, and we're planning parks, and that's fine, but just, we have to pull it back a little from saying that the FDP, we want it to be basically done and us to be happy with it, because it is an application that will be pending.
Well, I actually would challenge that. The reason why is we get to design our parks.
Yes.
We get to execute our design.
That's-
So if we want to design the heck out of it, I don't see any problem with that. And plus, one of the roadblocks we've always run up against is that the actual fact of cost of modifying an FDP. So if Ranch Capital puts an FDP together and it's a little off the mark or a lot off the mark, then for them to come back and have to amend that and resubmit it and whatnot is more and more cost to them. So if we can get closer, then we've had a lot of problems with FDPs and met and more and have them modified and pages removed and whatnot. So to me, there is value to building a smoother process. And ultimately, these are not Randy's parks. These are our parks that Randy executes, or Ranch Capital executes.
Trustee Hanson.
Do we have a laundry list of the things that we would like that
Yeah.
we could read back now? And then,
Yeah.
if we all agree on this laundry list now, why don't we give that to Branch Capital to put in there, to consider putting in their FDP? Then, aren't we there then?
Before the planning commission or after? I mean, what goes to the planning?
No,
commission?
actually,
I just don't see, though, how, I see where you're coming from, but I don't see how we can kind of negotiate with ourselves and then,
We're not negotiating
No,
with
actually,
ourselves.
this is
We
how-
want to see what we've asked for put on a graphic. So Shannon,
But-
could you?
If we had a
could you tell us
tighter-
how this would work from your perspective if we want these enhancements added to a graphic, added to?
Can I just say something real quick?
This,
If we had a tighter conceptual plan that had more of the details on it, and this is what we want, and this is what we give to the developer, then that's what we should be seeing in the FDP. If we give them this with all these nebulous ideas and possible changes, we're not going to see, it's going to be very difficult for them to translate what we're asking for. So I just want to see something more concrete, so to speak.
Sure.
but is that, are we doing that
Saves
at our,
time.
at our cost? And I mean, can we do that at our cost? I mean, can we, okay,
Yeah. Yeah.
all right.
Shannon Weber with Design Concepts. So yes, we can do that. It really kind of just depends on how you guys want to do it. There isn't really one set way of doing it. I entirely understand where you're coming from. I don't have a problem with doing that. We can certainly do that and get it back here to where you guys are more comfortable. There's a lot of things that were brought up tonight that we can certainly put into the plan, and if we want to bring it back to you guys and present it, we can do that so you feel a little bit more comfortable before it goes on to FDP. How that works from a legal standpoint, I'm not quite certain. That's kind of their expertise, but we've done that many times. So there's different terms for it. This is what we call a conceptual plan. Sometimes we call it a preliminary master plan, and then we get a final master plan. So in this case, we're calling it a conceptual plan. We would go right into what we call a final conceptual plan.
Can we review that list of the wishes for these parcels, and then before?
And I still want to hear from Kendra, because you were cut off, so I want to hear, like, legally, what our parameters are, so.
Legally, we can continue to work on a conceptual plan. We cannot talk about what we want to see in an FDP before we get to that FDP hearing. And I know that's semantics, but they're pretty important semantics legally. So we can continue to work on and find, revise and detail this conceptual plan, but we can't finalize it into an FDP. And like I said, I know it's semantics, but they're very, very important semantics.
So let's agree on this list and then send it off to get a final conceptual plan presented to us at our next meeting.
For timing purposes, does that work for?
Well, we'll have to
for
get
timing
with Design
purposes?
Concepts and make sure that they can do that, but, yeah, we'll try to make that work, yeah, if it works for
But
everybody.
in terms of where they want to be with FDP, does that
Yeah, I
work,
think
does that work
works.
to insert this
Yeah,
piece?
Yeah, I think we're okay there.
And I'm good with
Yeah.
going ahead with, another version of the
So
conceptual
if we
plan
meet
as
like
well.
in April, you're saying we can have a better conceptual plan.
A revised,
You don't wanna
not,
call
this is
it-
a good one, no, a
I
revised.
know it's semantics, but yes.
Don't bring up the word
Don't
FDPs anymore,
Yes.
conceptual plan.
Stop
It's
saying the
like,
word.
That's what we're going to do.
A revised conceptual plan.
Everybody-
That's
And
right.
then that goes to planning commission?
No.
No, not
The
yet.
rest of the process is correct.
Yeah, we'll have, once we get to the final development plan stage, once we get there, we'll have staff review initially, then the advisory committees, then planning commission, then town board.
Okay.
And my request for the revised conceptual plan is that you have a photo of terracing
Yeah,
from
yeah.
some other source that you think would work within our constraints. Likewise, the bridge underpass, what would work, what can we reasonably expect that to look like? So photos are 1,000 words,
Totally. And as I remember the Autry Park, we got that into a pretty tight conceptual plan that was very detailed. So, and that process was excellent. By the time we got to the final product, you knew what you were, you knew exactly what you were going to get, and it was beautiful.
I like how you're walking around
Thank
the
you.
minefield.
Thank you. I appreciate it.
Okay, I think that's a good plan forward. Okay.
Can we,
further?
can we hear that list of
Yeah, let's hear the
of
laundry
wishes?
So I'll go over what I have, Patrick, and then you jump in, or whoever. So we had a question about distance to the creek center from the trail on the north side, on parcel 2. Looking for a restroom closer to parcel 2 as well. Need more seating on the south side, or better option, terrace seating with photos.
And possibly the whole length of the
yeah.
field.
Need a way to prevent balls or players from going down into the creek area. Some creative design there. Drop off and pickup area near parcel 2. Larger, wider steps possibly going down to the field rather than 2 split stairways down. Incorporating some creative elements to the parks, grills, gazebos, shelters, etc.
It doesn't have to be that list.
Yeah.
But
I
you
just
get my
threw those
point.
down.
I don't want to
Yeah,
specifically
yeah,
say those
yeah.
because that may not be what we want.
Question about how close the nearest parking garage will be, which we can get to you, and then an idea of what the pedestrian underpasses architecturally will look like with photos.
And then the potential maybe T-ball and.
Oh, right.
Yeah. You don't mind.
Yeah, how that terrace, or how that slopes on that parcel 1, so we have a better idea of, are you gonna be at a 6-degree angle, going
Right.
down toward the creek or not?
Could a ball field and overlay in there?
Okay.
One last question about the trail and then that protected zone there for the rat, the mouse.
Jumping.
No cats allowed.
What prevents a group of 12-year-olds from riding their bikes and then stopping on the edge there and going down into that protected area? Because that seems more likely to me that if they're riding their bikes around.
Today.
Yeah, there's
Yeah.
we haven't proposed anything that prevents them, we just haven't invited them, and we've limited the paths across the street to the 2 that are included in the agreement with Fish and Wildlife. So 1 bridge here and a connecting path, 1 bridge here and a connecting path. This one's CDOT's and is not included in our agreement, but would be included in theirs. And so none, we just haven't invited them in there.
Okay.
And trying to enhance the buffer with vegetation.
One thing I didn't hear, just maybe missed, was doing this in such a manner that we naturally prevent balls from going down into the...
You did, we did. And one thing I didn't hear was a drop-off, pull-out.
No, I think you
Okay,
did say
you
that.
did? Okay, sorry. And then the lovely water feature in the corner there on parcel 1. What might that be? What could it be to be very inviting?
Okay.
That's where a photograph would work as well.
This isn't on your list, but we kind of jumped around a little bit. I think Chris asked the question of, was there sidewalk along Marshall Road? Seems like there might be an advantage or benefit to have a path from the parcel 2 pathway across to Marshall Road sidewalk. Instead of having to go get to Marshall Road from the...
Backtrack down.
Backtrack down and around and over, might there be a path that connects around the purple area there?
It looks like there's I see what you're saying, yeah.
Yeah, from the path that goes along the west side of the park.
This connection?
Yeah, there or on the other, yeah, wherever.
And then up here?
In there, so it's 2 ways to get to Marshall Road.
That's a good idea, because otherwise there'll be social paths there. if
Yeah,
they're
exactly.
not
They'll create them if they're not, yeah. So, or people will drop their kids there anyway, even if they're friends.
But thank you for your work, though. It's a
Yes.
work in progress, but it's with
And-
the proposed changes, it's going to look great.
One other thing, I know you created the 3D modeling. Is there any way we could see that quickly?
I would be happy to bring it up, Lisa Ritchie, town staff, if it's helpful at this point in the discussion. One thing to keep in mind when we do this, all we did was just overlay the PDF to get a sense of scale. This does not factor in grading. And that's one of the things, as I've been listening to the discussion, there's a substantial amount of topography change over this site, primarily due to the Marshall Road Bridge. And a lot of that is in order to get it up out of the floodplain, this grade in here has to rise quite substantially, which is why the drop-off was removed and things like that. So this area right here is quite a bit lower than this area up here. Similar where you've got the steps in this location, that grade is even more so over on this side. And so, your ideas for connections for the trails onto Marshall Road I think is great. It may reveal itself to be steps, not necessarily just a smooth trail. So let me kind of back this up a little bit.
It is nice to see this, though, this way, honestly.
There we go. Sorry, it's been a while since I've driven this thing. Kind of back up, you can kind of see where we are. Is there a certain area you'd like to look at or questions on? Or
Coming from the promenade.
Okay. And again, we can update the model more accurately with grading. It is possible to do. We did this kind of at a last minute, so we didn't, let me go down a little bit, sorry. Back at, here we go. This is about eye height. Slow us down. What we've talked about with the developer is having that intersection there at the promenade. He's absolutely on board. It's our understanding with having a pull-out or a drop-off there for folks to drop off their kids so that they can, immediately then enter into this park space. So again, this is where, should you desire, it would take a little bit of time, and again, it would probably be a little preliminary, but if we could, we would be able to include this grading, which then would highlight this elevation change. And what that would look like. So, from about this standpoint, you'd be down overlooking the stairs and overlooking this field here on parcel 2.
And that's 10 feet, you said?
I believe it's greater than that. I can't remember the number off the top of my head. It is 10 feet? Okay, 10 feet. Yeah, so 10 feet. So that's approximately what this would feel like here. The model is reflecting about 16 feet off the ground. So maybe about 16 feet above the field, assuming you're 6 feet tall. So we come down here onto the field. It's, kind of here in the middle, kind of get a sense for looking back into Town Square. If we come back up. Again, this area in here near Marshall Road, like I said, that there's quite a bit of elevation change. You have that 10 feet to start, and the Marshall Road, I believe, raises from there even higher in order to accommodate that pedestrian underpass at that location. And then it's coming back down in this location. One of the things that's still a little bit yet to be determined is the exact size of this parking area here, and a lot of that will be determined by the grade, as Marshall Road starts to rise, and how this grade is going to transition here, because the ground itself is going to be coming down. This pathway is coming down in order to go under Marshall Road at this location, whereas Marshall Road is rising. So preliminarily, this looks like about the last access point on Marshall Road before you could actually transition into here. Well, again, we'll confirm that. The goal is to maximize this parking area as much as possible. There are some grade restrictions there.
No on-street parking?
Correct. There's no on-street parking on Marshall Road in this location.
Couldn't you go back to the south, though, and put parking lot, even though if you don't enter off of Marshall Road back there?
Back to the south over
No,
here?
no, don't move.
Sorry.
Go back. So you enter here into the parking space. Couldn't you then either turn right or left and have parking spots?
You mean on this location, further this
No.
way?
Where
Or
you
this way?
enter right there, where your arrow is.
Okay.
No, you're entering over here. Is
Here?
that an enter or an exit?
I believe it's both.
Okay,
The circulation
so you
through.
enter there, and this only shows you a right-hand turn.
You mean-
Couldn't you do a left-hand turn and have parking there?
In this location?
Yeah.
Again, it will be determined by grade.
It's just a suggestion or
Sorry.
a question.
Yeah, we'll absolutely do the best to maximize it. The mouse was sliding, sorry. So as this rises, this isn't that great of a distance. In order to maximize this field, this trail elevation needs to be the same as the field, and to keep this relatively flat, this area here is going to have some slope to it. So that's...
Right, I've just looked at it, it's hard to tell because you don't have.
We don't have the grading in, right?
So Lisa, can you show us the town center face of Coal Creek? Do we have any sort of walking trail on the face between the edge of the field? So if I want to walk along the creek, how do I do that?
So on this south side of Coal Creek, between...
The playing field, right?
No.
No. There is nothing at this point.
It's all the habitat.
The field size that has been selected at this point is large, and then the buffer would bump right up to the edge of
I would like to
it.
see an option with a smaller field and a path, because when I think about the amenities Deb was saying.
Yeah,
like the
I thought
ideas-
there was.
That's where I like the idea of benches and picnic tables and whatnot, for those of us who want to go walk along the creek like you can Boulder Creek and sit there and
But
watch the water.
the path's on the other side.
On the other side,
It's on
there's
the other
one, huh?
side, and that's where.
There's a path on the other.
It's on the other side of the
Let's
creek.
see it.
It's on the other side of the
The
creek.
other side of the creek, the north
So
side of the creek.
There's
Well,
the existing
it's on
path,
both.
right? I think they're referencing the existing path that's on the north side.
But there's.
And again, on previous iterations, we did have trails in there, and all those needed to be removed due to the habitat.
They needed to be removed because of the habitat and the size of the field.
We were showing kind of trail connections down here in the creek. At one point, we had a concrete buffer walkway that during the last meeting we had noted needed to be removed, but we could add that back in.
No, don't put a concrete buffer around the field.
Yeah, we had at one point shown as crusher fine. There were some issues with the drain, with this being in a floodplain. We had converted it to concrete. And then the last meeting noted taking it out and started to work on some kind of connecting kind of trails in here, and then those needed to come out due to the habitat areas.
So show us how you get to the trail on the other side from the promenade.
Sorry, so ask that again, which trail?
Flip it coming from the promenade, and then show me how we would get to the trail.
Okay.
The Coal Creek Trail.
Sorry, I'm
Is that
coming
what
back
it is? It's
around
the
on
Coal
it.
Creek Trail?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, right there it
It's a
is.
better view just above it, right? You can see.
Yeah.
Right, yeah,
There.
where you.
Sorry, the model starts to fade the further away we get.
Yeah, I'd go.
Go down
I'd actually
closer.
go closer
Yeah.
to it.
Go closer, okay?
Yeah, go down.
Or come from the promenade,
Okay.
back, behind. There you go.
I'm gonna
Then
back
go
up this way.
There you go, yeah. that's
Sorry.
it.
Okay, now.
Okay, and then
down on
come
top of it.
No.
down into.
Like this,
There you
into
go.
the promenade.
Okay, so you go there and you turn left.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
You go to left and then you go up around the end of the west end of the, yeah.
Or you can go
Sorry,
the other way.
yeah.
Which other way?
You
Chris?
go to the right.
Yeah,
We
there's a
just need
bridge.
to be like.
Oh, yeah, you could go up to the CDOT trail and then back around. Yeah, you can go either way around.
Either way.
I
Yeah.
think we need to cut it down.
Can I, just one more question I heard earlier when we
I
first
was going to
started.
show you here, sorry.
Yeah, let's
Okay,
show it there. That's-
Sorry.
Let's do the trails and we'll
Okay.
go
Go ahead.
there.
I was trying to drive in some questions.
Yeah, so coming from the promenade here, you'd be able to wrap around either side of the field. Come here, hit Coal Creek, here's the underpass,
Okay.
come around and hit it here. This is this existing trail through here.
All the way through, all right.
All the
Okay.
way to Erie.
Yep.
Okay, trustee Hanson had something.
When the conversation first started, I heard cottonwood trees. Was that just an example? Or is that what we're really considering is cottonwood trees? Do we want cottonwood trees around there. So
I mean,
cottonwood.
A lot of what's in the Coal Creek corridor consists of cottonwood trees.
Oh, that's what's there now?
Yeah.
Okay.
There are also crack willow through there, a couple different species.
Okay.
Yeah.
And just to clarify, so we were talking about augmenting the existing cottonwoods only along the creek corridor, and then the proposed street trees and the more ornamental trees along McCaslin and Marshall and streetscape areas would not probably be cottonwoods. They would probably be conventional street.
It wouldn't be.
Would not. Would be.
Because they make a mess at certain times of the year, right? I mean, don't they shed their stuff?
Yeah, we would recommend
Seedless.
more street tree varieties, more typical street tree varieties.
Okay.
For those areas.
Okay, anything further? All right. Meeting adjourned. Thank you very much.
I guess you turn that into Matt, or Matt probably got it. Invoice for
Yeah, I gave it to, I gave it.